very unusual situation between them. So this is a perspective, but of course it will be very bad for Romania's geopolitical alignment, and especially for the support. Hello, this is DrPaulCottrell, and I am doing a live stream on YouTube today. It's May 4th. We're going to go over the news. You can ask questions in the chat box or with the simulcast on X Spaces. So thank you for joining today. I'll also do the replays on the different channels that I have. I have 4 channels on YouTube, Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. Please make sure you subscribe to all those channels. It's really important. In addition, if you could, please share the links and ask your social media to follow me. That way I reach a larger audience so I can inform the public on how to navigate through the financial turmoil that's going on in the markets, and also how to help with your health and wellness. If you've been following me for the last several months about how to navigate through the economy and the stock movements that are going on with equities, you would have made money. All right, so just pay attention. I tell you what exactly to do. It's really easy. All you got to do is listen. And the same thing with your health. If you stack these different supplements that I have on my store, you will improve your health. So with that said, please help support my work by going to my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. You get to see a lot of stuff. I have PDFs that you can download about different discoveries that have been published in scientific journals. I have ebooks, I have supplements, I have course material on immunology and pulmonology that you can purchase. I have lots of different ways for you to learn about health and also about what's going on in the world. I have free downloads of my podcasts on my website underneath broadcast radio. And you can also see my shows live streaming also on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. So please help support my work. You can donate through my website, through Stripe, PayPal, or Buy Me a Coffee. You can donate on the homepage, or you can be a paid member to my Patreon channel. It's through the donations and the paid membership that allow me to do these videos for free. These videos are not behind a paywall. They're all for free. And it's through the ones that purchase the products and also help by donating that allows me to publish thousands of videos for you to learn about certain things that are going on in your life that are important for you to take control of. All right. I give you solutions. A lot of people just tell you about what's going on in the world and their opinion with sometimes little fact. I'm giving you solutions to problems. You know, the market's going down. I tell you where it's going to stop going down, where the support levels are, where are the resistance points, and where to move into the market. When it comes to your health, I tell you how to boost up your immune system. Or you got other people who are just saying, oh, the world's, the sky's falling. The sky's not falling. Don't bet against America. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and follow me on this journey. I will lead you to the right direction. Don't worry about it. Just follow my direction and you'll be fine. This is something that I do. So, obviously it's working. So with that said, there was a missile strike launched by the Houthis that hit the international airport in Tel Aviv. So let's go to Al Jazeera right now and take a look at that.
Stop war. Israel is very far from being a safe place.
Very good to get your thoughts on this. No, Rapoport, we're grateful to you. Thank you very much indeed.
And you?
Well, Israeli forces have continued to attack Palestinians across the Gaza Strip. 23 people have been killed since dawn in the eastern part of Al-Mawasi. At least 10 people were killed when an Israeli drone struck a tent. Displaced Palestinians have been seeking shelter there. Several people, including children, were also injured. And Israeli forces have attacked the home of a photojournalist in Khan Yunis in southern Gaza. At least one person's been killed. Children are among the injured. A few hours earlier, another attack in the same area killed at least 6 people. Israel is continuing to prevent the entry of food and other vital aid into Gaza after its blockade entered a third month. That includes baby formula and nutritional supplements. The Gaza Health Ministry says more than 3,500 children are on the brink of starvation. At least 57 people have already died of malnutrition, and most of those were minors. More than 9,000 children have been treated for acute malnutrition since the start of the year. Over 75% of households say access to water has deteriorated over the past month. They often have to choose between showering, cleaning, or cooking with the little water they have. UNICEF says vaccines are running out and disease is spreading. Acute diarrhea now accounts for 1 in every 4 cases of disease recorded in Gaza. Most cases are among children under 5. As starvation takes hold in Gaza, trucks full of humanitarian aid are just a few kilometers away on the other side of the border. According to UNRWA, nearly 3,000 trucks carrying life-saving supplies are stuck in Egypt. Israel has been preventing all food, fuel, and medicine from entering Gaza for more than 60 days, marking the longest total blockade the Strip has ever faced. Mahmoud al-Sahi is Oxfam's food security lead in Gaza, and he's in Gaza City. He says he expects more children are going to die of malnutrition in the next few days.
We are used to have such a suffering and restrictions in getting the supplies in, but nowadays the situations are completely harmful. So we are unable to have any kind of supplies coming in. Now we are seeing how the people are suffering. When you are knowing that 85% of the population in Gaza are dependent on aid, and now we didn't have any food sources. The stocks are still exist, and it's all fully depleted. And there is no any operational bakeries all over the Gaza Strip. And the only lifeline for food assistance, which is the community kitchen, is expected to last just fewer than 10 days. And as already said, we are expecting to see one after another closing and shutting down, what we are expecting in the coming days. Also, we are seeing this rapid increase in the numbers of the Gaza children who are suffering from malnutrition and diseases. Just yesterday, a child who died because of the malnutrition, and we are expected this number to rapidly increase in the coming days.
Hani Makko is joining us live now from Gaza City. Hani, we were just talking about 3,000 trucks, according to UNRWA, carrying life-saving supplies stuck in Egypt on the other side of the border. In the meantime, of course, Palestinians in Gaza facing a food crisis.
Well, Rob, as of this moment, is a multi-layered crisis gripping across the Gaza Strip and really displaced and traumatized population. And this, forget for the past 18 months, the amount that have been allowed into the Gaza Strip in terms of food supplies, medicine, water, and other survival items were just enough for that period of time. It did not make up for the lack of a larger period of time without any of these supplies, or the gap that was created by months of devastation and destruction. Let's also not forget the months of devastation not only crippled infrastructure, but also have destroyed the supply chain into where areas that are supposed to have a proper deconfliction, but also that did not happen. It threw the entire Gaza Strip into further uncertainty. And as of now, the 3,000 trucks we're talking about, they are on the other side of the border, just a few miles from anywhere across the Gaza Strip. And it only takes just opening the crossing and allow these items to pour into the strip and save lives across the strip. We're talking about not just food that is running out, but also in terms of necessary medical supplies in the hospital are running out and causing any medical intervention to save lives to be quite hindered as of this moment. We heard it from medical staff throughout the day, today of last week, about the increases of cases of malnutrition that has started to be quite visible. This crisis, once hidden, now it's on the surface, it's everywhere. People who are unfortunate are unable to get to any of the operational medical points and hospitals. They struggle for real on daily basis inside the tents or the displacement site where they have their children, without providing their children with any meaningful source of living. That's when it comes to water and food supplies, and also hospitals supposedly to provide this are unable to do this.
Hani, we were talking just a few moments ago also about the Israeli attacks that are still ongoing. We've heard about attacks in Khan Yunis and in al-Mawasi. Just tell us what we know about those.
Well, when you look at what the current enforced dehydration starvation is, the direct byproduct of these months of devastation that did not stop. It has been going on for now 2 months, at least 2 months since the Israeli military broke the ceasefire with Hamas here in the Gaza Strip. Ongoing bombardment already caused further civilian casualties and forced displacement and sheer level of destruction. Everywhere you go, you will see that it's quite visible. But primary of what we've seen throughout the day is direct attacks on family of 10 people. It's a family that was sheltered inside of tents, and their in-laws who were seeking shelters with them inside this tent. 7 women were reported killed in the attacks, 1 child and 2 adults, and several others from the surrounding area were reported with severe injuries. And when we talk about severe injuries, these are the severe bleeding and the severe burns caused by the bombs that dropped on these tents. And as soon as they arrive to the hospital, it becomes so difficult for the medical staff to intervene and provide necessary medical care to save lives. And as of this moment, hospitals are overwhelmed. And this is the aftermath of every attack, overwhelmed health facilities, inability to provide meaningful medical care, and the lack of medical supplies makes the whole matter much more difficult. Another family was also killed in Deir al-Balah. A father, a mother, and 2 of their children, 4 years old and 2 years old, were also killed inside a tent. And attack in tents is not the first time. We've seen it happening over the past 2 weeks and every single day.
Hani Mahmoud in Gaza City. Hani, thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna
Israeli forces.
switch over. I'm gonna switch over to Fox News and they're talking about Iran and its nuclear capability. But before we do that, please help support my work by going to my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the great products that I offer. It helps support the work that I do, and it helps support your health and wellness. Get the structural nano silver soaps that I have. I have it in lavender. I also have it in peppermint, and I have 2 other varieties in charcoal tea tree and in lemongrass. Very high quality soaps that I use on a daily basis. Get a few bars for your household, help support my work. Use discount 5, you get $5 off. It's all caps, discount the number 5, you get $5 off any order. All right, with that said, let's pivot over to what's going on in Iran.
This isn't on me. Everyone. It's regional terrorism, disruption of trade, as you point out, which is our vital national security interest, and the heartbeat of the global economy, whether we like it or not. All of that will be thrown into the hazard. And to your point, in terms of development of a nuclear armed ICBM capable of reaching the United States, most estimates say they're 12 months out, but our ability to guess, of course, has been an imperfect track record, to say the least. We've never been able to successfully anticipate a partner, ally, or adversary developing a nuclear weapon. Our track record is 100%, and it's a failure. And so we should be extremely cautious about estimates, but the risk is real. I would say, too, that they only back down when confronted with force. The myth of a regional war as a result of it is just that. Iranian and Obama-era talking points facing a false dichotomy. When confronted with force, they back down, and that is the 4-decade history of the regime.
And aren't they in the weakest position really they ever have been in terms of a military strike? If the president wants to take that position, it won't only get worse and much more difficult as time goes on.
There's no question. Not only was Iran fundamentally weak all along, as Israel pointed out in response to the May and October missile strikes, drone and cruise missile attacks against them, also the largest use of ballistic missiles from one state against another, and another reason why we would believe that they might use nuclear weapons if they had them. But it certainly points out that as Israeli strikes indicated that it can be done, war doesn't result in that. We can, in fact, have freedom of action and operational flexibility inside of Iranian airspace if we need to do so. They are a patient that has been anesthetized. Operations can commence at much lower risk as a result of it. And with Hezbollah and Hamas now nearly eliminated, we now have greatly diminished the capacity of them to respond, and that deterrence capacity is eliminated. And with Syria falling and the land bridge connecting to Hezbollah, they are at certainly the weakest position they've been in at least 3 decades.
And the response to you, Robert Greenaway, as the response to so many smart people who are conservatives, who are Republicans, who've been looking at this through their experience and so forth, is, oh, you must be a warmonger. Oh, you must support forever wars. In other words, you get cliches, you get slogans. You really don't get substantive, knowledgeable responses that dissuade or in any way significantly challenge what you're saying. In other words, what you're saying is a fact. It's unequivocal. It's not debatable, which is why President Trump is saying we've got to stop them from getting nukes. And yet others are out there acting like, well, that's just because you're an ideologue and an old time. Is that what you are? You're a warmonger? Is that why you're concerned about this?
Well, after 6 years of
I'll tell
combat,
you, just look at as an analog between Pakistan and India with their nuclear proliferation. If Iran gets a nuclear weapon, it's going to force Saudi Arabia to purchase a nuclear weapon. They have the money. They have the money to build up a nuclear arsenal. So, and the Saudi family has already telegraphed that if Iran does get a nuclear weapon, that's exactly what they're going to do. So it's not hearsay that there will be nuclear proliferation within the Middle East. And the strife between the Sunnis and the Shias is way bigger than what's going on with India and Pakistan. So the world and the region cannot afford financially or just in terms of just mankind's stability with Iran having a nuclear weapon. We cannot let that happen. And that's why these failed policies from the Obama administration and even the Biden administration has made the world more dangerous. So we have to make sure that we knock out their capability. Now, I personally believe that Trump is not being forceful enough, probably because he's a little afraid to do it. He's a little afraid to knock it out. He's, worried about how it's all gonna, how all the dominoes are gonna start falling, and a larger conflict in the region. But the thing is a leader sometimes has to realize if you let this thing fester and it reaches a certain critical mass, your enemy is going to have capability that reduces your optionality when you need to go to war with them. We cannot let Iran, that theocratic regime, have a nuclear weapon, period. And I think that Trump is slow walking what the United States really needs to do. The United States needs to knock it out and decapitate the Ayatollah, literally. That's my take on it. We cannot have Iran have a nuclear weapon. It has nothing to do with being a warmonger. And the thing is if you decapitate, literally, the Ayatollah, you're going to actually have true democracy in Iran. See, some of the people out there are thinking, if you go to war and you knock out the Iranian nuclear capability, then somehow it's going to galvanize the nation and all of Iran is going to be going against the United States and its allies in the region. I don't think that's the case. I think the Iranian population is fractured. There is a big part of Iran that wants democracy. And then there have this smaller part that's very powerful, that's a theocracy. And it's the theocracy that's pushing for the nuclear weapon. So if the United States knocks out the theocracy and the nuclear capability, it allows for democracy to flourish in Iran.
Afghanistan, I'm not enthusiastic about anymore, or sending U.S. blood and treasure abroad, but I don't think that's what's required. I don't think that's what would result. And again, 4 decades of history have demonstrated that Iran will back down only when confronted with force. They accelerate their aggressiveness when they meet weakness, and that's the point. And so I hope that we won't flinch, and I'm sure President Trump
the thing is, stop talking Iran. It's the theocracy within Iran that's the issue. That's the big problem. So all you got to do is knock that out. We need to stop being afraid and just do it.
Understands the Iranians full well and will not. The only acceptable amount of enrichment for the world's largest state sponsor of terrorism is zero.
Yeah, and you and many
Absolutely.
others are literally trying to defend America.
I mean, think about
defend
this.
our ally
Think about
Israel.
this. Why do they need nuclear power? All right. If they are floating on a sea of oil, they don't need it. That's the point. And then they would say, well, maybe we need it for our, for medical care, for our machines and, and all this. Well, you can purchase that on the open market for the radioactive material that you need for these machines, or even for therapies, like radiation therapies and all this. You can buy that on the international market. You don't have to build this huge apparatus and industry to enrich nuclear material for healthcare. All right? No, they're doing it for a weapon. Wake up.
Defend the West is really what we're up against. Thank you, my brother. You take care of yourself.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Mark.
We'll be right back.
Hey, Sean Hannity here.
All right.
Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News.
Trump needs to pull up his big boy pants and stop making the same damn mistakes that we've had for decades and with multiple administrations. And we need to knock out the theocracy of Iran. This is a very simple concept. That doesn't mean it's going to be easy, but it's a very simple concept. Decapitate the Ayatollah. All right. All right, what I want to do is take a look at, there was, there was a video that I was going to play that was about the conclave. So let's go look for that. Hold on. There was, I don't remember who published it. There was, but this was today. 6 hours. No. Okay, let's go to CBS News.
At Zippy Shell, we make moving and storage simple. Whether you're moving and plan to do it yourself,
preparations are underway to elect Pope Francis's successor. Cardinals arrived at the Vatican this morning ahead of next week's conclave. The College of Cardinals set Wednesday, May 7th as the start date to elect the next pope. Today, the Vatican released video of workers installing the stove at the Sistine Chapel, where the ballots will be burned during the conclave. Chris Livesay is in Rome with more. Chris, good morning.
It's interesting. I didn't know that the actual stove that they burn the paper, the white paper or the black paper, and then the smoke comes out of the stack. I didn't know that stove was installed just for the conclave. I thought that was a permanent fixture. So I didn't know that. Wow.
Morning, Dana. Well, there is an old phrase in Rome warning against papal ambitions. He who enters a conclave as a pope leaves it as a cardinal. Of course, we won't know until that white smoke comes up behind me above the Sistine Chapel.
There's perhaps no clearer sign of an ensuing conclave. Vatican firefighters installing the chimney. Where, when the Pope has been named, white smoke will billow. As for who the next one will be, the Church leaves it to 133 cardinal electors and the Holy Spirit. That's not stopping pundits and even bookies from weighing in on the so-called hopefuls. The odds-on favorites, Italian Cardinal Pietro Parolin, Secretary of State under Francis, and Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle, the former Archbishop of Manila. Both are seen as aligning with the papacy of Francis. There are also conservative hopefuls like Cardinal Robert Sarah from Guinea.
That's who I think's
But
gonna do it.
there's a twist. Less is known about the 15 cardinals that Francis named from countries that previously had none, or how they will vote. One of them is Anders Arborelius from Sweden.
We live in a time of conflict, wars, rearmament, and so forth. So it's important to
All of mankind has been in conflict and wars. There's never been a time when there wasn't. This is nothing new.
have a voice that can say something else, that God is present.
One thing is certain. Whoever succeeds Francis will inherit a papacy that transcended the walls of the Vatican to embrace migrants, the marginalized, even inmates. Like at this Rome prison, just 3 days before he died.
To me, it was a miracle that he showed up. La figlia.
It's where we met Giovanni, halfway through an 11-year sentence.
This was Pope Francis's last trip outside of the Vatican. He could have gone anywhere, but he chose to come here to see you.
Maybe it was a gift for the prayers I recited.
What do you hope for in the next Pope?
That he's like Francis, that he may come very close to his path. I hope.
Now, the last several papacies have been decided in the first 2 or 3 days of conclave. But remember, there are a lot of new cardinals this time around, and it may take some extra time for them to get to know each other and to decide who should lead the nearly 1.5 billion Catholics around the world. Dana?
All right, Chris, the eyes of the world will be watching. Thank you. We will have full coverage of the papal conclave, and we'll be bringing the news the moment a new pope is elected to you. It begins.
Okay, let's go to Al Jazeera. Them talking about the Houthis hitting the Tel Aviv airport with a hypersonic missile.
If you're an executive, this shirt is a must-have in your closet.
I was tired of floppy colors and shirts that accumulated bad sweat stains. So I got this shirt I saw on TV.
Whoa! Whoa!
An unprecedented scene in central Israel as a missile launched by the Houthis in Yemen hits Ben Gurion Airport. The Israeli military confirmed it failed to intercept the missile and is looking into how and why it was able to bypass the country's multi-layered air defense systems. The Houthis say that this attack was a success.
The missile force of the Yemeni armed forces carried out a military operation targeting Ben Gurion Airport using a hypersonic ballistic missile. The missile successfully hit its targets.
Israeli authorities.
Now, it's really important to realize, for the ones that have been watching, there is the soul roots, all right? Esau and Jacob, all right, soul roots. They were the twins that battled each other, right? You know, in the Bible. So half of the year, the soul root of Esau is strong. The other half of the year, the soul root of Jacob is strong. Now, from February, March, April, May, June, July is the months that Jacob is strong. And it moves in an arc. So the zenith strength for Jacob is in April. We're in May now. So we're starting to see the waning of the strength of Jacob in terms of metaphysics here, of the strength of the soul roots. It's starting to wane, but it's still relatively stronger than Esau. Now that inflection point changes, and Esau becomes stronger than Jacob in August. August, September, October. Now, if you look at most times that problems have happened in the Western world, or some sort of conflict, some bad things that happen with US military, it's usually in October. All right? So just pay attention. September and October are really powerful months for Esau to attack Israel, to attack the Western powers, right? Now, I find this very interesting that the Iron Dome didn't work with the Houthi hypersonic missile. All right, and we're doing this live stream in the beginning of May. And I've been saying the solar root metaphysics since October 7th of 2023. So this is nothing new. For the ones that have been watching me, you know exactly what I've been saying. And you just saw, even though the soul root of Jacob's still strong right now until the end of July, it's starting to wane because everything's in a cycle. It's like a sine wave, all right? So beware of August, September, and October, I'm telling you.
And the perimeter is minimal, despite a massive crater being formed when the missile hit the area.
It's a big crater.
You can see the scene right behind us here, a hole that opened up with a diameter of tens of meters and also tens of meters deep.
Israel's defense minister says the country will strike back, as Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his security chiefs consider a potential response.
Now think about this. Okay, it's a hypersonic missile, so they're having, serious capability from the Houthis. And guess what? The United States is bombing the Houthis. They're hitting them, but it's obviously not degrading their capability sufficiently. The United States needs to ramp it up. Stop pussyfooting around. It needs to go all out. And it's not going all out. What it is they have a kit that they're going to use for military operations, for their strike package. So they have their kit for their strike package. Some bean counter is saying that X amount of missiles is going to cost X amount of dollars. They've targeted, they have a targeting of the Houthis and what to hit. And they hit them, and then they start depleting their supply. The United States is depleting our missile supply and ramping up the cost. We need to just hit them full out and stop playing the bean counter game. It's bullshit. It's what's happening. It's bullshit. With the amount of capability and the amount of money that we spend in the military, we can't knock out the Houthis. You gotta be kidding me. You gotta be kidding me. There's something fundamentally wrong with how it's being conducted. This hypersonic missile should have never been able to launch. It should have been completely wiped out through the bombing that the United States has been doing. What's wrong here? What's going on?
Al Jazeera.
Let's take a closer look at the Houthis, who they are. The Iran-backed group has carried out attacks across the Red Sea, positioning themselves as supporters of Palestinians during Israel's war on Gaza. The Houthis have targeted Israel with missiles and drones, aligning with other Iran-backed factions to oppose Israeli policies. Their naval operations have significantly disrupted critical international trade routes, triggering Western military responses and forcing the rerouting of global maritime traffic. Mohammed Al-Attab has more now from the Yemen capital.
I personally think the United States needs to really ramp up our Air Force and really ramp up our Navy in that region and kick the shit out of the Houthis.
We are witnessing continued attacks by the Ansar Allah over the last period since the beginning of the U.S. Aerial bombardment. Despite of this heavy bombardment, the Ansar Allah still have they still have their own operations to continue. Last night, over the night, and into the early hours of today, the U.S. aerial bombardment continues. They have had different provinces, including Sa'da, Jawf, Al-Hudaydah, and Marib in the country's northwest and the center. In Sa'da alone, there were 8 airstrikes targeting Takhya region on the district of Majza district. We have had also Sahar district in the same province. On the western coast, 2 airstrikes hit Ras Isa in Al-Hudaydah province, with additional strikes targeting Kamaran Island and also the Asarif district. Meanwhile, also they have had the Marib with 10 airstrikes. Particularly, they have launched attacks on Majza district and another 6 aerial bombardments on Madghal. In Al Jawf also province, they have had Al Hazm district with 10 air strikes. Despite this heavy bombardment, as I told you, the last night and over the 1 month and a half, the Ansarullah fighters continue their air strikes and launching ballistic missiles on deep inside Israel. Also, that we have confirmed bombarding Ben Gurion in an attempt to achieve what they claim or what they are aiming at to make this international airport as no safe area for international flights.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.
Even though, Al Jazeera is a biased news network, sometimes it's really important to watch what is happening because you don't hear it in the United States mainstream media, right? Now it is biased, but it's important to get all the vector points of information to discern what you really think is going on, right? Instead of just having a certain a bias feed of news. But I'll tell you, the United States is failing in terms of knocking out the Houthis. They're failing. Now the question is why? Is it incompetence by Hegseth? Is it their concern? Are they concerned about how much money is being spent on each weapon that's launched? So it's a money issue. What the hell is going on? No one's asking these questions in the mainstream media. All right, now what I want to do is I want to go to Times Radio. Times Radio had a neat publication. And Times Radio is also doing Conclave. Putin fears May 9th attack. Let's go to that one. Oh, that's a membership only.
This invasion is actually a military sort of.
All right, that's a membership first. Never mind. Let's go to the Conclave battle.
Well, I think it's more open than that, and I think the issues probably don't from the political community. But the conclave is not generally affected by a whole lot of lobbying, and there are a lot of people who come to Rome with the idea of influencing the conclave in various ways.
The one thing that the Americans do have is money, and I think they are really hoping to shape the future of the church.
Now, the selection of the next pope is just around the corner. 133 cardinals will form the conclave as of Wednesday. There's been a lot made of the alleged divide between conservative and liberal-leaning potential candidates. J.D. Flynn is editor of The Pillar and former editor of the Catholic News Agency. Morning to you, J.D.
Good morning, how are you?
Yeah, I'm very well, thank you. Now, you've been mingling with the cardinals in this sort of interim period. Of course, there's been days of mourning as well from the funeral mass of Pope Francis until conclave begins. What are you hearing from cardinals? Is there this sort of divide, or is the contest more open than that?
Well, I think it's more open than that, and I think the issues probably don't easily boil down to liberal and conservative. The real issue for a lot of cardinals has to do with just the management of the Vatican. As you might know, the Vatican is in a very dire financial situation, and that has impact on the church all around the world. There's also there have been problems with kind of bureaucratic management over the past couple of years. You'll recall that a high-ranking cardinal was convicted of embezzlement not very long ago, and just last week, the Vatican Secretary of State was ordered to pay about $4 million in legal costs to a British businessman who with whom it has had some shady dealings. And so there's a kind of administrative dysfunction in the Vatican right now that for a lot of cardinals is priority number one. Those I speak with, those say that they're not quite sure how to assess exactly who's competent to manage that. That's what they're trying to suss out now, who has a plan to sort of right the ship from an administrative standpoint, while also doing the really important work of the Pope, which is to be a chief representative of Catholicism and evangelist the gospel. And so it is, from my point of view, a pretty open election right now. The cardinals I speak with say they're really not sure even who they'll vote for, let alone who will emerge as the Pope.
It makes for an intriguing, well, period of time. Who knows how long Conclave will go on for? But on the issue of money, JD, our paper, the Sunday Times, reports this morning on the American donors who have descended on Rome, offering to help with that operational deficit, and there is questions about the parts that money will play in kind of influencing cardinals, perhaps, just as Conclave begins. It's perhaps uncomfortable for rich Americans to be there to write some checks.
Well, first of all, that sounds like a great story. I'm glad I'm on time to describe it because I can't wait to read it.
Very good. Points for you.
but you know, the conclave is not all of the decisions of the conclave are indeed political because the church is a social and political community. But the conclave is not generally affected by a whole lot of lobbying, and there are a lot of people who come to Rome with the idea of influencing the conclave in various ways, and most of the time they don't have very much access at all. So I can't comment on that specifically because I'm not open the Times yet this morning, but I'd be surprised if it was a factor that even very many cardinals were aware of.
Yeah,
the cardinals tend to be a fairly insulated group, even during this time of what we call the general congregations when they're coming together. They tend to be speaking mostly with one another, with their aides, with other people in the life of the church, less so than kind of anyone who might be here to lobby.
Just finally, JD, we have about 30 seconds for this, but US President Trump has been criticised by some after he posted an AI-generated image of himself as the Pope, just days after he joked to reporters, "I'd like to be the Pope." What's your response to that?
Well, as an American, I get asked what I think about what the president is doing pretty often. That was a strange one, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yes, very strange indeed. Is it disrespectful?
You know, I understand why a lot of people certainly think it is. I think it's not my place probably to say that, but I think for the Cardinals, I think it has seemed to some like a mockery of the process or a diminishment of the significance of what's happening here, to be sure.
Now, we could have a new pope by this time next week. The conclave, which will elect the 267th pontiff, will begin on Wednesday. The piety of the candidates may not be the only consideration. Could it come down to American money? US donors have descended on Rome, offering to help. But how much influence do they have? J.D. Flynn, the editor of The Pillar, a Catholic news site, says the selection process is always contentious.
All of the decisions of the conclave are indeed political because the church is a social and political community. But the conclave is not generally affected by a whole lot of lobbying. And there are a lot of people who come to Rome with the idea of influencing the conclave in various ways. And most of the time, they don't have very much access at all. So I can't comment on that specifically because I'm not open the Times yet this morning, but I'd be surprised if it was a factor that even very many cardinals were aware of.
Well, the former editor of the Catholic Herald, William Cash, has been looking into this for the Sunday Times. He's with us now. Good morning.
Morning.
I didn't realise, William, until I read your brilliant piece in the paper today, that actually the Catholic Church is pretty hard up.
Yes, well, the truth is that historically speaking, of course, papacies have been sort of parts of financial transactions. I mean, talking about the sort of Medici times. I think it is true to say that no one is suggesting that the Vatican can be bought. I think what people are saying is that there is some soft power that is being generated by the sheer scale of money that Americans have. The Papal Foundation, which I've written about in this piece in the Sunday Times, last year gave away $14 million. It's now trying to raise $750 million. And someone said that this room could possibly raise as much as $1 billion. We have a situation where Pope Francis has said himself that there is a sort of existential financial crisis in the Vatican because of the pension deficit and because of the sex abuse scandal, especially in America and other places. Diocese has gone bankrupt. And you'll remember the story about the scandal in London relating to the Knightsbridge property development, where the Vatican overspent by £100 million. So the truth is that the church is facing a financial crisis, and the one thing that the Americans do have is money. And I think they are really hoping to shape the future of the church. I do agree with your previous contributor from the Pillar that it's not a sort of transaction, you give us this amount of money, you could have this pope. There's not that sort of horse trading. But I've been in Rome for the last week, and what is clear, and that's why the piece around this week, is that the real papal hustings, the real decisions, the real alliances are taking place now as we speak in Rome. And by the time that the 133 cardinals go into the conclave, it's pretty clear that they will have narrowed down who they're going to vote for.
And when you talk about that soft power and how this American money wants to shape the future of the church, is all this money coming from the same viewpoint of what the future of the Catholic Church should be? Or is there a discussion amongst those people with that huge amount of cash that they want to put towards the Catholic Church?
Well, that's a really good question, because I think what people are looking at in the conclave is, first of all, how long it will last. People are saying that a lot of insiders actually want it to be a short conclave, because with all the world media camped outside St. Peter's, a protracted stay in the Sistine Chapel will show that the church is hopelessly divided and that they can't agree on anything. Now, America is not going to get its own first pope, but what it does show is holds up a mirror to the deep divides within the Catholic Church, and that is certainly true also of the Catholic leadership in America. When I was editor of the Catholic Herald, we published something called Catholic Leaders of Today, about 300 of the sort of wealthiest movers and shakers, influencers and philanthropists, and they're pretty much divided. I'd say probably 60-40. A lot of the money is conservative Republican money. But the truth is that they do want very different things. You're right. I mean, some of the people in Rome would have wanted a Pope Francis II continuity candidate. They might be inclined to vote for someone like Cardinal Parolin, who's the current Secretary of State. But a lot of people I spoke to actually want a complete change of direction. Even Cardinal Dolan of New York has said that it's time to perhaps go back to a more traditional pope. And certainly the bigger American money wants a completely radical change of direction for the church, would probably be backing someone like Peter Erdo. Now, with Peter Erdo from Hungary is a sort of certainly a conservative, but he has been very careful not to clash with Pope Francis. And I spent some time with him in Budapest, and he learned English in Plymouth, and he told me that actually he has a great fondness for English fish and chips.
I love that. And I must say your piece in the paper is so good today to read just about sort of the influences of the older cardinals who obviously can't vote in the conclave, but they're very much making their opinions felt, the conversations in the restaurants around the Vatican. It's absolutely fascinating. Thank you so much for speaking to us this morning, William.
Thank you very much.
Take care. Former editor of Catholic Herald there.
I think it's going to be the Black Pope from Africa. That's going to be the big contender. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the vitamin C and magnesium. This will help to boost up your immune system and help with your skin. In addition, vitamin C and magnesium, with the magnesium in the supplement, is going to help with your brain function. Really important. So help with your skin, your immune system, and your brain function. Take the vitamin C and magnesium. If you're not feeling well, take a double dose. Make sure you drink it with filtered water. Another great supplement that I have is magnesium and zinc. Again, magnesium helps with your brain function. Very important. And magnesium and zinc will help to boost up your immune system. You can take the magnesium and zinc and the vitamin C and magnesium together. Magnesium also helps the efficacy of vitamin D3. So it's important to take magnesium take foods that have higher levels of magnesium, and also take supplementation. In my store, you can get magnesium through the magnesium and zinc, the vitamin C and magnesium, and the Boomer Boost. Now, stack these together, magnesium and zinc, vitamin C and magnesium, boost up that immune system, help with your brain function, and you're also helping with your skin. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Use discount 5 to get $5 off. Now, we're in the allergy season, all right? And it's really important to mitigate any irritation that you may have. Now, if you're in an environment that has poor air quality, you also want to use these lozenges and drops to mitigate any irritation that you may have in your throat. Take the elderberry zinc. You get 21 in each bag. It has the structural nanosilver. You can also get drops. The structural nanosilver drops are smaller than the lozenges. You get 100 in each bag. You can get it in blueberry and honey and lemon, and also in cherry. So please go to my store, get the drops and the lozenges, have a few bags at home and at work. You never know where you have that irritation. Again, we're in the allergy season. You want to mitigate it right away. By taking the drops and lozenges, you're helping to protect that epithelial lining in your oral cavity and your oropharynx, and that helps to boost up your immune system. Please take my advice. The moment you have that irritation, mitigate it right away with the drops and the lozenges. Use discount 5 and you get $5 off. If you purchase $150 or more on any order, you get a free gift until supplies last. All right. With that said, let's take a look at I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to pivot over to the Naval Institute, and they're going to be talking about future wars and how to win them.
Welcome to the Proceedings Podcast. I'm Bill Hamlet, the Editor-in-Chief of Proceedings at the U.S. Naval Institute. Today is Wednesday, April 16th, 2025. Good to have you on board, everyone. This episode is brought to you by Booz Allen. Booz Allen delivers outcomes with speed for the nation's most critical defense priorities. Work with solution engineers who use AI, cyber, and quantum to help warfighters collaborate faster with allies and partners, from the open seas to the edge of space. Learn more at boozallen.com/defense. All right, joining me today, my guest is Marine Corps Major Mike Holdridge. He's the author of an article in the April issue of Proceedings titled Home Station C2 Will Help Win Future Wars. Major, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
We're Phoenix Energy, a family-owned oil company focused on unleashing American oil from North Dakota and Montana. We've already sold over 2.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Before we dive into your article, just tell our listeners a little bit about your background.
So for my background, my commissioning source, I commissioned in 2011 as a graduate of the Platoon Leaders course for the Marine Corps. No prior enlisted service, anything along those lines. I received the MOS of 0602 Communications Officer in 2012, and I hit the fleet in 2013. And my current job is at the Marine Corps Warfighting Lab, where I'm a concept development team leader, primarily focusing on infantry battalion modernization.
Cool. All right. A lot of good stuff coming out of the Warfighting Lab. In fact, quite a few of your colleagues down there have written for Proceedings in the last couple of years. Yeah. So now let's talk about Home Station C2, or Command and Control. So your article states at the start, if the Marine Corps conducts C2 for the next generation of warfare, the same way it conducted C2 in Iraq and Afghanistan, the service will fail in its mission. Pretty strong words. To be effective in future conflict, the service must experiment with, train toward, and be ready to command and control forces from home station. So just to start off, what's Home Station C2? What does that mean?
So to really understand that one, I have to talk about really what the opposite of that is. So I'll start with the opposite, then I'll go into much more detail about Home Station C2. Really, this is a focus on, there's a heavy emphasis on kind of this Alpha Bravo command and control node, which is at echelon, really focused primarily on the infantry battalion, the infantry regiment, and the analogous organizations throughout the MAGTF, of having replicated capabilities, mirrored capabilities at each one of those nodes, that are able to both exist within the the adversary's weapon engagement zone, and are able to transition control of the battle in between those two nodes without any degradation of capability, degradation of service. It relies on a lot of different things in order to actually be able to effectively do that one. That, in my opinion, is not really achievable, primarily because we have to recognize that within modern warfare against a peer adversary, there is a trade-off that exists between capability and targetability. So basically, in order to remain less likely to be targeted, you have to start to control your signature. And it's not just your electromagnetic signature, your physical signature is one of the biggest indicators of those nodes. So you have to start thinking about how many people can I actually have at this node is one of the first questions. And as soon as you start to slim down those nodes into really small numbers of people, then you have to have a conversation about prioritization of the different warfighting functions. So, for example, how many Intel Marines can you have at one of those very small signature nodes in order to actually be able to do Intel processing? And then that exists across all warfighting functions. Home Station C2 is really the other view of how to do this one that more closely aligns with this forward main concept. And we recognize when we talk about a forward main that the forward has less capability, but they are focused and prioritized capabilities for the commander needs, whereas the main has all of the capabilities. Home Station C2 is just looking at extending where that main is located closer and closer to the continental US, where the likelihood of being targeted is significantly lower. The range rings for enemy assets are very different, and the likelihood they're going to reach out and attack a battalion or regimental or division main that is sitting in CONUS is very different than a battalion, regimental, division main that is sitting in country and is within a range ring of a lower echelon weapon system. That kind of concept.
Got it. So let me just put that into non-Marine speak, maybe for our audience that aren't Marines that are trying to understand this a little bit. So currently, the thought process, if I got this right, Alpha Bravo, so two communications nodes or headquarters nodes forward, both would be, let's say we're talking about a China scenario here, both would be within the first island chain, right? And so one could pick up if the other one, is degraded or destroyed or attacked, right? But you've got still both Alpha and Bravo nodes are inside the weapons engagement zone of the Chinese military, right? That anti-access area denial zone. And what your article, this Home Station C2 concept is, you'd have a forward command and control node, probably smaller, very focused, that would be inside that first island chain, but the main command and control node would be back maybe at Camp Pendleton. Did I get that right?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, all right. So, so you're larger. So you said you mentioned battalion, you mentioned regiment level or division size. What are we talking about for a command and control node for both of those, or for all three of those sort of scenarios in terms of the numbers of people? And the footprint that you would have both forward and at Home Station.
So I've seen a variety of different constructs that they're trying to get this down. And again, one of the biggest indicators of what those nodes are is the physical size to it. As you can imagine, a division C2 node is significantly larger than a battalion C2 node, just because there's a lot more things you're trying to do, and there's a much larger staff. A lot more support requirements that are going to have to go into this. But at the battalion level, we've seen around 20 people, maybe 30 people within each one of those nodes, which is still really large, and it's still something that is going to cue interest from adversary forces. It's certainly enough that would cue interest from our forces for looking at stuff. The question is, when you're talking about, say, 25 people, how many of those different warfighting functions can you really prioritize to maintain continuity of operations over an extended period of time? The human factors that are involved with having a node up for a week and the displacements that have to go into this, the continual security, all of those other things that are going to very rapidly erode the human factors for that node, challenges having only one or two Intel personnel. I'm just using Intel as an example of this, but it exists within fires, within logistics, within any of those different warfighting functions. You end up having to have at least 2 to 3 people per warfighting function, but that very quickly fills up your 20 some odd person C2 node. And really you end up getting this conversation about having to prioritize. And we see units doing that already because there's not usually much of an admin focus at these. So I'm talking about the actual administrative Marines that are doing things that are important during modern battlefield because they're doing the casualty tracking, they're doing the purse stats, the personnel reports, all of those other things that track where everybody is on the battle space. It's still an incredibly important thing, but it's not as directly related to combat power. So those are getting deprioritized within these nodes. But then where do they sit? If you have both Alpha and Bravo, and I have seen units kind of create a third, like a rear area node, to fill in some of these deprioritized warfighting functions that, in my opinion, we can actually resolve this by, instead of having an Alpha Bravo or having a forward main, that main exists in that rear area where all those other ancillary tasks that are important but are deprioritized can fit in. And you can do a lot more. Because again, the other concept is with the Alpha Bravo, obviously if they get targeted, things along those lines, destroyed, the other one's able to pick up. But you're also able to do this in advance of getting targeted. So display. In advance of getting targeted, so displacements. If Alpha needs to tear down, Bravo can take the fight. Well, if the main is always online and always ready to do that and always has perfect cognizance of what's going on in the battle space, or at least as perfect as we can get within the friction of war and an inherently dynamic environment, then the Alpha can tear down and move at any point in time, or the forward, I should say, can tear down and move at any point in time because you always have the main online.
Gotcha. And that's different from the way Marines operated in Iraq and Afghanistan. In those two conflicts, there were Alpha Bravo, they're both forward, they're both, close to the main fight, right?
Yes, and even when we had a forward and main construct in Iraq and Afghanistan, that main would typically be in country. It would be relatively close to it. Now, there's a lot of differences as to why within that semi-permissive counterinsurgency environment, that compared to large-scale combat operations against a pure adversary, we recognize those are inherently different. But we also saw in Iraq and Afghanistan that we had a large number of very high echelon C2 nodes in country with a lot of people that never left the wire, never actually left that FOB area. Right. Which is, there's an article that I pulled in for this one written by a Army Brigade commander, who was Colonel White. And I'm paraphrasing what he said here, but it was one of those questions of if somebody never left the wire, do they have to be there to do their job? Because inherently they did not.
Right.
They didn't go out on a convoy, they didn't go out on patrol, they didn't go out for key leader engagements. They just happened to be doing their job from Iraq or Afghanistan. And things were a little bit different with technology at that point in time. Things were nowhere near as reliable in 2003, 2005, 2008 as they are today. So it was one of those questions that somebody had asked me when I was first drafting this article, and I was sharing the ideas and make sure that I gave myself a sanity check. And they were asking of whether or not those nodes in Iraq and Afghanistan would have been as effective if they had been ran from, say, Pendleton or Lejeune. And my response was, well, technology has changed. At that point in time, absolutely not. But with how we have proliferated technology in the last 20 years, yes, because I can, as an example, if I can watch a Group 1 UAS flown on the other side of the world with perfect video quality, no latency, and that is a very, very strenuous information exchange requirement to be able to watch that full motion video, then why can't I do anything else for it? And I can tell you, I can. That's one of the things I tested at McWill is I can actually watch any of this Group 1, Group 2 UASs anywhere in the world from my office in Monaco. So if I could do this from Quantico, why can't a division or a regiment or a battalion in Maine do it from Camp Pendleton, Camp Lejeune, anything along those lines?
Yeah, so the technology is changing, not just for Blue Forces in terms of the communications technology. I think you put in your article something about unless you're talking on line of sight within 5 miles, whether you're 5 miles or 5,000 miles away, it's almost immaterial.
Let me just interject and give me my opinion. All right, now it seems to me that because of drone technology, it's going to be very important. There's two aspects to this drone technology. One is the United States use of it to getting information in the battle space. And therefore, you may not need as many forces forward deployed in a particular operation. But you also have your adversary using drone technology. So if your signature space is smaller, it's going to be harder for your adversary's drone technology to target your forward deployment. All right. And we can see that what happened in Ukraine with the Russians using an old style military operation where you have many soldiers, in this case it was North Korean, that were just charging the field in a very World War I, World War II kind of mentality, and getting picked off by these drones. All right. And you're also seeing in the battle space in Ukraine that it's turning into a trench warfare to hide from the drones. Right? It's going kind of underground or in trenches and in camouflage. So it's weird that even with technology, we're kind of reverting back to a trench warfare, which is weird, right? Which may lead to the use of biologics and chemical warfare. All right. So, okay, so let's go back to the actual size of the forward deployment. I think there needs to be a lesson learned for just in time in manufacturing. If you don't have enough redundancy, if there's a problem within your supply chain, you shut down the main manufacturing of these of the final assembly because your sub-assemblies aren't coming in on time because of some sort of disruption within the supply chain. Now, on the surface, just in time, JIT, manufacturing seems to be, it helps to reduce inventory. You can adapt to customer whims in terms of optionality, especially in vehicles or vehicle optionality. So you're adjusting your inventory quickly. You have less inventory, so there's less investment on the balance sheet. That's the reason why JIT came about. The problem is you don't have redundancy. And when you don't have redundancy, you can get supply shocks. All right, so I'm concerned that if you have a smaller signature forward deployment, all right, that you don't have enough redundancy that if something happens with that forward deployment to be able to backfill. It's the same lessons learned with GIT.
But the adversary technology, the threat, if you will, is changing radically as well. Talk a little bit more about those aspects. I'm curious about the sort of GPS denial, electronic warfare, those sorts of things. Is there a risk in being, having your main headquarters back home in that forward GPS and electronic, heavy electronic warfare environment that you're going to face, against a peer adversary?
So there's absolutely risk. I'm just going to go off and say it on the bat. And one of the problems, in my opinion, is that we do not do a very good job of understanding risk within the information environment, within the electromagnetic environment. We kind of view it like a binary of there's risk or there's not risk, which we don't do in any other form of warfare. We understand the risk, we measure the risk, we find ways to mitigate the risk, and at times the commander accepts risk when required in order to meet the mission and recognize that there's a difference between risk to the individual and risk to the mission. And we don't do a very good job of understanding that. We do recognize that GPS jamming, GPS denial, spoofing, jamming, anything along those lines does exist, but very rarely do we actually start to assess what that risk really means for maneuver. We have the same thing within EW. Now, granted, a lot of this is my job as a commo is to find a way to communicate at any time. And because of that, we've built in very resilient and reliable PACE plans. So PACE is primary, alternate, contingency, and emergency communications methods.
Yes, it actually is possible to eat healthy and still fly.
Actors made the biggest difference in how I eat and how I stay on track with my goals.
Communications methods. We've built resiliency into our architectures in a lot of different ways, far more than we ever had in the past. We PACE plans. So PACE is primary, alternate, contingency, and emergency.
Okay, PACE acronym is primary, alternate, contingency, emergency.
Communications methods. We've built resiliency into our architectures in a lot of different ways, far more than we ever had in the past. So the risk of electronic warfare and GPS jamming 100% exists, but what's the level that it exists at? And what is the mitigation that we come into in order to ensure that we still have the ability to communicate? And really, it also gets into understanding that within enemy technology, we have to accept that they have, because electronic warfare is not just jamming. Electronic warfare is also the sensing aspects. It's the direction finding. It's finding my nodes based off the electromagnetic signature. Our adversaries have very good ISR, so intel, surveillance, reconnaissance drones. They're able to use a variety of different methods to collect and find our locations. And it really has become a transparent battle space. Nobody can remain hidden in today's battle space off of a variety of different things. But again, this goes back to the risk conversation about, yes, there's a risk of being found, but it's understanding that level of risk. And really, the most effective mitigation thing, this was another article that I pulled from the Commanding General of the Army's National Training Center that we saw during some of our IDX experimentation. And it was fantastic because the article referenced the idea that in a transparent battle space, nobody can remain hidden, but anybody can look unimportant. Well, we have to start realizing what is going to cue the understanding of what something is. And again, this gets back into the conversation about the physical, technical nature of those things that are existing at those nodes. With people being one of the primary things that are going to give away a node. And it's not just people, because it's smaller satellite dishes. It's counter battery radar systems. It's tubed artillery. It's a fantastic example of identifying that something's probably an artillery firing position if there's tubed artillery. Within our C2 nodes, we can recognize that we're probably not going to have tubed artillery right next to a C2 node. That's probably not a great idea, so we probably won't do that. But if we have 50, 75, 100 people, well, that's much more indicative of, especially if there's nothing else around there, that's most likely going to be a C2 node. So it's recognizing the different capabilities the enemy has, understanding the risks that can come out of this, but also having a much more in-depth conversation about what that risk is, rather than saying there's risk or not risk. It's understanding the levels of risk. Now, we talk about the differences of home station C2 and how do we mitigate some of those risks. Well, that's why at no point in time am I ever going to advocate that the forward should not be in theater. If we do have some of those impacts to it, well, you do have the forward that is in theater that can do limited command and control for a short period of time, because on none of those electronic warfare or jamming things are they a permanent off. They are a short-term temporary off that you usually want to cue into other kinetic effects that the adversary may be wanting to do. But you do have that mitigation from having that node in there. But it's also recognizing, again, when a discussion about what does the risk actually mean, if we're using beyond line of sight means anyway, anything that's going to jam somebody that's in the US is going to impact somebody who's 50 miles away, 100 miles away, at times even 5 miles away, if their primary means of communication are not line of sight, they're beyond line of sight.
Gotcha. Your article also ties in very nicely with some ongoing discussions about contested logistics. So large C2 nodes inside the adversary weapons engagement zone, those are hard to sustain, right?
Yes. So an example to this one is you know, I was looking at a regimental main during one of the exercises last year. There was about 150 to 175 people. But we have to recognize 150, 175 people. That's taking a lot of class 1 food and water, class 3 fuel, and probably class 5 for the security posture as well. That importantly is not going to somebody else. It is not going to the guys that have to be there in order to do their job. You know, the service rifle for our infantry units, the M27, only shoots so far. So they have to be at a certain spot in order to be able to do their job. But if we can prioritize the logistics, and it's not just the logistics, it's the maneuver between islands, if we're looking at the Indo-PACOM area. And again, this applies everywhere in the world, not just the Indo-PACOM area, but we recognize contested logistics is really, really hard there. If we're talking about the difficulty of moving a rifle company or an artillery unit or a sensing unit from one island to another, and we want to take away that littoral mobility to give that to a C2 node, they can do that job just as well from Hawaii, Camp Pendleton, Camp Lejeune, name your other country that we might want to put those nodes at. But we've now expended that limited littoral mobility on that asset instead of the guys that actually have to be there to do their job.
Yeah, got it. So as I was reading your article, I was reminded of the adage, culture eats strategy for breakfast. How likely is it that a Marine
All right, before we continue on, let me just plug a couple supplements here. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the probiotic. It's in the veggie cap form or in the powdered form. I take the powdered form because it's easier for me to take for lunch because I take a lot of different powders like the collagen and the gladiator barley and the lignans and the boomer boost, so it's just easier for me to take. But both are very high quality probiotics. Take it every day and you're going to reduce the inflammation in your gut. You're going to help with your absorption of your foods. You're going to help with your immune system. You're going to improve the communication between your gut and your liver and your gut and your brain. You're going to be able to concentrate more. You're probably going to sleep better. And with a good gut biome, your overall health will improve and your skin and hair and nails will improve. So please start with this foundation. Do probiotics every day. Take them, drink it with filtered water, really important. Another foundation to add to the probiotics is the multivitamin. This multivitamin is easy to digest and it has the vitamins that you need as cofactors for enzymatic activity. So your cell is performing its cellular processes and its metabolism to a high degree. Take it every day, drink it with filtered water. Take the multivitamin and the probiotics, really important, as a foundation. Use discount 5 and you get $5 off. If you spend $150 or more, you get a free gift till supplies last. Please go to my store and get the multivitamin and either the veggie cap probiotic or the powdered version. I take the powdered version, but there are many people that take the veggie cap version. Please go to my store, help support the work that I do, and also help support your health and wellness.
Will be willing to commit forces while sitting back in safety at Camp Pendleton, for example. In other words, is moving to home station C2, is this going to be a major cultural shift and one that, you know, might not happen because of that culture, right?
So yes. So there's one, there's the cultural aspect of we want to this idea of shared misery, and it's not so much that like we want that we're trying to find ways to be miserable, but it's recognizing our junior Marines are going through absolute terrible situations. They're living like animals. They're doing all this stuff because they're out there doing the hard work in the West. But I'm back here in Pendleton, and I have a shower, and I have a cup of coffee, and I stop at McDonald's for breakfast on my way in, which is not what our Marines are getting to out there. There is absolutely that problem. However, I would contend that the higher echelon headquarters never actually experienced the level of shared misery that the guys at the front line ever did. The other part to it is we should not let this feeling that we should not let the personal emotional feeling compromise our strategy, because the impacts to having a division C2 node that gets destroyed and kills the entire division staff and kills that division CG, the impacts of that are enormous.
Yeah.
And really, we recognize that is one of our critical requirements, is the ability to rapidly synchronize across all the warfighting functions and to enable all of these different pieces to work together. While we do have decentralized C2, there are still aspects of our C2 architecture that require all of these different things to function together. Our fires process with Brighteon would massively slow down if the FSCC no longer existed. Commanders' decisions are going to have a problem set if the commander is no longer alive. In order to make those decisions, then we have to start working through the succession of command. While we have a process for that does slow down our tempo.
Yeah. Therefore, it's really a critical capability, which makes it a critical vulnerability, right?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
The other part to it is there's a quote that I keep hearing around when we talk through these things. Tradition is peer pressure from dead people. Which is another one of those culture eat strategy for practice. Great adage, and it really forces.
I gotta write that one down.
It really forces us to have a hard look at tradition is great. Tradition is amazing. Tradition gives us that spirit of war on all those other things that give us the motivation to be better every day. However, we do have to balance that about is this logical for us to do?
Yeah.
There is so much induced risk off of this that we have to have that honest conversation. Now, the other problem with this is recognizing as well that all of these senior officers, senior commanders, senior enlisted are basing things off of their experience. So when I first checked in, my immediate boss that I had at McWill, a fantastic officer, Lieutenant Colonel Gerald Miller, I absolutely love the guy, but he told me a joke my first day. He said, "Why do commanders carry pistols? To shoot the combo." And it's because we just recognize that comms have not always been great. Comms was always a challenge. He would always tell me as well that comms is a matter of will, to find a way to be able to communicate. Things 10, 15 years ago were nowhere near as reliable or resilient as they are today. As an example, I'm blanking on my years right now, but I believe it was 2022, I deployed out with Task Force 61-2, the 2nd Brigade Division. And when we finished the deployment, we're doing our going away and doing all that stuff. And they had a chance to talk about every staff officer that we had on there in the division CG. When it comes time for me, he lamented the fact that he never got to yell at me about comms ever being down, because comms worked the entire time that we were out there for the deployment. We had one small window that had very little operational impact, and we were able to resolve that problem in an hour once we actually realized there was a problem. So things are so much better today than they've ever been, but it is getting some of these commanders, some of these senior officers, some of these senior enlisted to recognize how things have changed since the early 2000s when comms were not reliable. And, when I was a battalion commo, we would do debriefs from any of our convoys operations we went on. And one of the debriefs from it was that their no comm plan, their signal plan for when communications wasn't working was really good. And the line that came out of that was no comm plan is good, which then as the battalion commo, that was constantly throwing at me whenever I talked about anything. It was like, oh, well, no comm plan is good. No wonder your stuff isn't working. Like, okay, let's have a better conversation about this. But it is, I think it would be really challenging for a lot of our senior officers and senior enlisted to be willing to do this during training because
my love of agriculture, it started here with Miss Kelly. She had no idea that I'd be leading a global team working on this. But getting here wasn't easy.
During training, because it is recognizing the cultural and the experience differences that they've had. However, I'm also of the opinion that as soon as rounds start flying, this will be the natural occurrence, because if we don't do this, I think we're going to have a lot of dead colonels and generals, and the living colonels and generals will take the hint and start doing this from a distance, so that they don't have their C2 nodes destroyed, and they don't lose tempo as a result of having those C2 nodes destroyed. All the arrested staff members that enable us to be able to do all these things across the warfighting functions. I think this is a natural occurrence. So I'm just trying to get ahead of the curve, so people start thinking about this before we start having dead Marines.
Yeah, I'm curious what kind of feedback you've been getting on the article, or if it reflects, conversations and potential, things that you're working on at the Warfighting Lab.
So Russians' failure. Most of the feedback that I have gotten has been positive, of people saying this makes sense. This is the direction we need to start changing things to. And I know that there's negative criticisms. Nobody's reached out to me with those negative criticisms yet. And I'm very curious what those are. So I'm actually kind of looking forward to getting some of those negative criticisms. So if anybody does see this and they think that I'm incredibly wrong or way off base, please let me know. And I'd love to have the conversation, because I want to, frequently when I go through these things, I hope that I'm wrong. I don't want to be right about this, because I'm going for kind of like a worst case scenario where I think we'll have a lot of, dead generals, colonels, and all of the other people that support those generals and colonels. I'm hoping that I'm wrong, but I haven't seen the reason as to why this doesn't make any sense. More importantly, the reason as to why having those people within the res is going to be fine. So I'm looking forward to people giving me negative feedback, but everything that I've gotten so far is this makes a lot of sense, and this is the conversation that we need to start getting to.
Yeah, I like it. For anyone out there who has a comment on this article, we always invite comments at proceedings. You can email a comment up to about 400 words to comment and discussion at USNI. Just send an email with the name of the article, and we'll publish that, our comment and discussion, which is our letters to the editor in proceedings. And we look forward to that. So we're running short on time. Any last questions I should have asked, or parting shots, or save rounds for me, Major?
So there's one other piece I want to throw in here for it is we used to have a conversation a couple years ago about trying to build more and more multidisciplinary Marines that can do many things. There's kind of the idea of getting towards like a soft mindset and all this other kind of stuff. And part of the conversation was earn your seat on the MP22 by being able to do more than one job. And in my mind, we need to start changing the conversation. Instead of earn your seat by saying you can do more than one job, earn your seat by saying why you have to be there to do your job.
Mm-hmm.
I have, at previous times in my career, there's one specific one where we had established Special Forces MAGTF CENTCOM. So we had I was with a logistics battalion at the time. We had a small det go out there to support the 06 level headquarters. I went out for Special Forces MAGTF CENTCOM. And it was a very small det for the battalion. I was not on that det. I was able to do all of my comm planning from Camp Pelton for the guys that were out there in Kuwait and all the other stuff they did in Special Forces MAGTF. So if I could do my job from a distance and do all of my comm planning, we need to start thinking about ways that we can do that for other stuff as well. So it really goes back to, in my mind, earn your seat by saying why you have to be there.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Good way to end it up. So my guest today has been Marine Corps Major Mike Holdridge. He's the author of an article titled Home Station C2 Will Help Win Future Wars. It's in the April issue of Proceedings. Mike, thanks for writing for Proceedings and for being on the show today.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. I'm glad that you guys published the article, because gives me an idea that I'm in the right direction for stuff. So I appreciate the opportunity. Appreciate the opportunity to be in your own podcast.
Yeah, and this wasn't your first Proceedings article. I'm sure it won't be your last.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the turmeric, the ashwagandha, and the lignins. This is a very powerful stack. It's the third pillar of my core protocol, and I'll go over that really quickly here. The first pillar is max 35, max 14, or cleanse to boost up your immune system. The second pillar is C60 to soak up free radicals. The third pillar is the turmeric, the ashwagandha, and the lignins to boost up your immune system and help with your cardiovascular system. And Boomer Boost to boost up your energy levels and metabolism. So let's talk about the third pillar right now. Turmeric will soak up free radicals, and it's also going to bring down inflammation. That's very important for your cardiovascular health and your immune system. Ashwagandha root will bring down cortisol levels and help control your blood glucose levels and reduce inflammation. Again, important for your vascular system and for your immune system. And lignins will bring down inflammation and soak up free radicals. Again, by soaking up free radicals and bringing down inflammation, you're helping with your vascular system, because when you reduce that inflammation and you're soaking up free radicals, you're reducing the chances of buildup of plaque. And lignins helps with boosting up your immune system and helping with your endocrine system. It's a powder, so you take it each day. So you get a little scooper, you take it once a day. This is a month's supply or so. So take the turmeric, the ashwagandha, and the lignins for the most powerful combo to boost up that immune system and help with that cardiovascular health. So please go to my store, get the turmeric, the ashwagandha, and the lignins, use discount 5, and you get $5 off any order. If you spend $150 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. The link is in the description of this video and all my videos. All right, let's go to Wall Street Journal, a neglected Indo-Pacific military posture.
Russia's failure and or Russia's success will have a direct correlation on deterrence in the Pacific, and Russia is a significant threat in the Indo-Pacific.
A House Armed Services Committee session, which received a little coverage in early April, mainly due to tariff developments, was a meeting of defense officials, including Navy Admiral Samuel Paparo, who heads up the US Indo-Pacific Command, to discuss military posture and national security challenges in the region.
I know that China is watching. I know China is directly supporting that effort. And I think that Russian success will embolden China, and Russian failure will give China pause and would enhance our deterrence.
One of the biggest challenges in the region right now is the ever closer cooperation between China, Russia, and North Korea, for which Admiral Paparo says each country now compensates for the other's weaknesses.
China has provided 70% of the machine tools and 90% of the semiconductors to support Russia's rebuilding its war machine. North Korea provides thousands of rounds in support and troops, and coming back to China and to North Korea are key capabilities where they would otherwise be behind that would help close the gap. Submarine technology, missile technology, and surface-to-air missiles, and so forth.
Admiral Paparo said that one of the critical needs that would provide a big deterrent advantage to the US is through the Counter-Sea Five Eyes Secure Communications Initiative.
The ability to dazzle, deceive, destroy, the adversary's ability to see and sense, and then hardening our own ability to give a high-fidelity common operating picture to units to unlock their ability to operate tactically.
But digging deeper, he said there were many other areas that also needed more attention.
Having 90% of the space lift in the world to bring counter space capability, and then to continue to enhance our cyber capability, and many others in the form of long-range weapons, in the form of unmanned and AI systems that affect air denial and sea denial in enclosed places such as the Taiwan Strait, augment these.
One ongoing effort for the Indo-Pacific region is AUKUS, the trilateral security partnership that involves the US and the UK assisting Australia in acquiring nuclear-powered submarines to recapitalize their new navy.
AUKUS delivers something to Indo-PACOM that is critical and could be a key advantage, and that is an Indian Ocean submarine base. This gives us faster response time to the South China Sea than in Hawaii, in Washington, in San Diego. It gives us the key ability to maneuver into the Indian Ocean without the burden of having to go through straits.
Can you tell me where are we in relation to the need for getting to that 2.33 submarines a year for AUKUS and ourselves?
Presently, we have a generational advantage from a submarine standpoint against our adversaries. And this is key, critical, and indispensable to the ability to prevail. The PRC, though not perfectly linear, but the PRC is outproducing the United States by a rate of 2.0 per year to 1.28 presently attack submarines per year.
What's your take on that, Admiral Carl?
It's inadequate, and we've got to work harder in order to do that. And it's a combination of a steady stream of funding. It's a combination of liberalizing the defense industrial base, reforming the industrial base, and so we have to work harder. We have to get to 2.3, 2.4, 2.5 per year, and we can't rest until we do so.
Other vital Navy operations, such as the Amphibious Ready Group and the Marine Expeditionary Unit, are also facing an uphill battle over resources in the Indo-Pacific.
What do you see as your alternative in a crisis response if when you call for an ARGMU, there's not one to be had?
Amphibious ships are absolutely critical to this effort, and we are not meeting mission globally on doing so. It's a matter of the maintenance of the current capability that we have, and frankly, it's also a matter of the number of amphibious ships that we have.
In 2024, Admiral Paparo wrote an advisory article for the US Naval Institute titled "Aircraft Carriers Are Still Indispensable."
Carriers are absolutely critical in the weight of fires that they can bring, which is many, many times X almost any other capability. And when knitted together with the rest of the joint force, they're part and parcel of an all-domain force, executing every mission from ASW to strike to air superiority. It's a mobile, capable airfield that the enemy would have to work very hard to target. And they work hard to target them because they are so afraid of them.
Representative Kiggins made the point that right now we continue to decommission ships at a rate that far outpaces new construction. In some cases, investing in maintenance and upgrades only to retire ships as soon as they return from deployment.
Given our growing global commitments and the urgent need for naval presence, how does this approach make sense, Admiral Paparo, and why are we decommissioning ships and we are clearly short on capacity?
I'm not a proponent of divest to invest. I'm a proponent of make before break. And I prefer not to decommission combat relevant capabilities until its replacement is on board. So its sailors and Marines can properly transfer to that platform and get into the fight.
Also aging are the F-18 squadrons in the Atlantic.
How would an F-35 integration help with your mission?
F-35s are critical, and we cannot make that transition fast enough across the force, and F-35 must be a part of the Atlantic fleet, in my humble opinion.
As rehearsals for forced unification continue in the waters surrounding Taiwan, the question becomes, what will the US do if China makes its move? Accelerating US military investments will surely help, as would a return to alliance building in the region and further afield.
Okay, we're gonna take a look at this video that's dealing with China's plan to block all submarines. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the great deodorants that also help to detoxify your body. I've partnered up with Rainbow Herbals, and we've developed these deodorants that are made from essential oils from the Himalayas. Extremely high quality deodorants. You can get it in peppermint, lavender, and tea tree, or in citrus. These deodorants are for males and females. It has no aluminum, no baking soda. It's made from natural ingredients, very high quality deodorants that will help to detoxify your body. So please help support my work by getting a few bars for your household. Again, these bars are for males and females. Help support my work and help support your health. Go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, use discount 5 and get a few bars for your household. If you spend $150 or more on any order, you get a free gift until supplies last. Now let's talk about another great supplement that I have, which is the first pillar of the core protocol that I've been talking about. You can get Max 14, which is 14 parts per million, Max 35, which is 35 parts per million, or Cleanse, which is 30 parts per million. Depending on the parts per million, depends on the price point. So I have available 3 different price points for you at different ppms. These will help to boost up your immune system. You take a teaspoon a day, swish it in your mouth, gargle about 20 seconds, 30 seconds, and swallow. What that will do is improve your oral cavity and your oral pharynx. It will help to maintain the health of your epithelial lining and your mucosal barrier. That way you're boosting up your immune system. So take the Cleanse or the Max 14 or the Max 35, use it every day. If you're not feeling well, take a tablespoon or 2 a day. And once you start feeling better, go back to your maintenance dose. Boost up your immune system by taking the Cleanse, the Max 14, or the Max 35. I've been taking Max 35 for 5 years, every day, all right? So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and take a look and stack these supplements in such a way that will help to boost up your immune system, help to improve your overall health, and slow down the aging process. Again, I have this core protocol that you can build off of. Max 35, Max 14, or Cleanse for the first pillar. The second pillar is C60 to soak up free radicals. The third pillar, turmeric, ashwagandha, and lignans to boost up your immune system and help with your cardiovascular system. And the fourth pillar, Boomer Boost. Boost up your energy levels and your metabolism. Please go to my store, use discount 5 and you get $5 off.
The world's oceans are a vast and mysterious expanse, and beneath their surface lurks an invisible armada. Right now, at this very moment, an unknown number of submarines, stealthy, silent, and armed with the most advanced weaponry ever devised, are gliding through the depths. From nuclear-powered ballistic missile-armed submarines capable of wiping entire cities off the map, to attack submarines stalking their targets from the darkness of the ocean floor, ready to cripple their enemy's surface operations. These vessels operate in a realm beyond civilian sight and often beyond accountability. Just last year, a Russian Kilo-class submarine was detected inside the Philippines' exclusive economic zone and had to be escorted out by the Philippines Navy. Every major naval power maintains a fleet of these submarines, and every major naval power has invested billions of dollars into detecting and destroying these dangerous machines. This technological battle is coming to a fore in the seas surrounding Taiwan, where China is currently building what is being dubbed the Second Great Wall of China, the Great Underwater Wall of China. This wall isn't designed to stop the advance of Mongol hordes, but designed to detect and locate even the stealthiest of submarines. One of the many new technologies being deployed around the world to even the battlefield against these powerful submarines. Since 2016, China has been operating 2 underwater sensors, one located in the deepest point on Earth, Challenger Deep, and another off the coast of Yap, Micronesia, both within earshot of America's farthest.
I'm done spending an obscene amount of money on takeout every done.
I'm getting back on track with Factor. Fresh, never frozen meals or canned fish. This takes us so much time for it.
Both within earshot of America's farthest flung military outpost in the Pacific Ocean, Guam, and directly on the path through one of the primary entry points into the South China Sea. These sensors have been tracking US naval movements for nearly a decade, and that program is being expanded to cover the entire maritime border of China to ensure submarines cannot enter Chinese territory without being detected, something that could cripple an amphibious invasion of Taiwan before it even started. This great wall of acoustic sensors are currently being installed at an estimated cost of $300 million, and China has not been shy about sharing their new capability, with videos of the installation process and scaled models of the system being shown off on national Chinese news. Each of these devices that we saw fiber optic cables being attached to by an ROV is a sonar array. These are active devices that send pulses of sound and wait for a return signal, with 3 of them being attached to a primary gateway, allowing them to precisely triangulate the position of anything within range. The system also incorporates hydrophones, passive detection that simply listens for intruders. While nations around the world have spent billions developing ultra-quiet submarine technologies, this system prevents an enemy from being able to locate the sensors through those sonar pings, which are audible to their target. Each cluster of acoustic sensors are estimated to have around a 160-kilometer range, and China is expanding that system to cover every entry path into the South China Sea. The system is powered through cables linked to onshore facilities, delivering 10 kilovolts of high-power direct current, while each of the sensors are connected by optical fibers, allowing data to be quickly shared and analyzed. Incredibly, there also appears to be a charging dock incorporated for an underwater drone, which may be for system maintenance, but could easily be used to power autonomous drones designed to attack submarines. One of the many areas of technological development under focus by naval powers around the world, but more on that later. This is a massive undertaking. This scale model depicts the system as it was installed and tested off the southern coast of Hainan, which is also one of China's primary submarine pens and a vital part of their force projection into the South China Sea. Detecting a submarine is simply the first part of countering them, and there are many more ways of unmasking these machines as they lurk below the surface. Sound isn't the only way. This is the Lockheed P-3 Orion, one of the primary tools in the United States submarine hunting arsenal, and one of the few planes in the United States military that has been in service for over 50 years. It can carry a huge range of anti-submarine weapons like the Mark 50 torpedo. It was specifically designed to attack deep-diving submarines, and its primary design feature to allow it to complete this task is its propulsion system. We need a high energy density power source to achieve the speeds and range needed for a weapon like this. But there's one major problem for a device designed to dive to the extreme depths that submarines dwell in. The pressure outside the torpedo continually rises, and eventually that pressure is going to be higher than the exhaust pressure of the engine. This can be solved by actively pumping the exhaust out, but there is a more elegant solution: storing the exhaust products on board. For most combustion engines, this is a recipe for disaster, but with the right reactants, it can work. This torpedo is powered by a lithium fuel and a sulfur hexafluoride oxidizer, a highly unusual fuel oxidizer combination, but they have one critical property. The volume of the products of combustion is smaller than the volume of the reactants, allowing them to be stored on board without any pressure buildup. The reaction occurs inside a boiler where the heat generated is used to create steam, which drives the propeller. The steam is then driven to a condenser mounted on the outside surface of the torpedo, where it can be cooled by the surrounding water rushing by, and then returned to the boiler as liquid water. This system also means the torpedo does not have an exhaust wing, making it harder to detect. However, the P-3 is rarely used in an offensive manner. Its primary role is in reconnaissance, and one of its most distinguishable features is this huge pole sticking out of its rear stabilizer. This is a magnetic anomaly detector. It searches for the tiniest disturbances in the Earth's magnetic field. The hull of a typical submarine is...
Critics everywhere are calling Marvel Studios Thunderbolts one of the best Marvel movies of all time.
Thank you, we needed that.
Yeah, I think so.
The hull of a typical submarine is made out of ferrous materials that become magnetized by the Earth's magnetic field. This induced magnetic field then disrupts the relatively constant distribution of the naturally occurring magnetic field. There are a couple of methods to measure magnetic field anomalies like this. We have quantified the strange induced magnetic fields of Europa using a fairly simple magnetometer. It consists of a base coil wrapped around a metallic ring core. On one half of the ring, the wire coils clockwise, and on the other half, it is wrapped counterclockwise. Another measuring coil is placed on top of this ring to measure the magnetic field running through the core. Without an external magnetic field, the magnetic field generated by these opposing coils would cancel each other out. But when placed inside a magnetic field, the core has a slight bias in the external field's direction. This can be sensed in the outer windings and measured as an electric current, allowing us to detect magnetic fields with precision, but not enough precision to detect a submarine. For that, we need a device with an incredibly high sampling rate and sensitivities as low as 0.001 nanotesla, 50 million times weaker than the Earth's magnetic field of 50 microtesla. To measure this, we take advantage of light and its interaction with helium atoms. Helium atoms interact with infrared light at a precise wavelength of 1085 nanometers. When a helium cell is placed between a laser of that wavelength and a photodiode, the atoms absorb the light and jump to a higher energy level. As they relax, they emit light in random directions, reducing the amount that reaches the detector. But this changes when the atoms are exposed to a magnetic field. Their energy levels split into three, with the energy gap between them depending on the strength of the magnetic field. This is known as the Zeeman effect. Now, when the laser shines on helium, atoms can still be excited, but as they relax, they may fall into any of the three levels. The key is that 1085 nanometer laser can only excite atoms from the middle level. Eventually, the laser depletes that level, leaving fewer atoms available to absorb the light. As a result, the helium cell becomes transparent, a condition called the optically pumped state. To measure the magnetic field, we add a radio frequency pulse tuned to the energy gap between the levels. This pulse repopulates the middle level, letting atoms absorb the laser light again. This results in a dip in the detected light, but only when the pulse's frequency matches the energy gap. At the average magnetic field strength of the Earth of 50,000 nanoteslas, the corresponding frequency is 1.4 megahertz. At 50,100 nanoteslas, it's slightly higher at 1.43 megahertz. By constantly sweeping the range of frequencies and observing when light intensity drops, we can precisely determine the magnetic field strength perpendicular to the helium laser axis. With three detectors aligned along the X, Y, and Z axis, we can map the magnetic field in 3 dimensions. However, even with this technology, it's not easy detecting a magnetic field anomaly this small. The ASQ81 magnetometer is typically housed in a boom or tail stinger extending from an aircraft to minimize interference from the aircraft's own magnetic field. Chances increase drastically the closer the detector is to the object causing the anomaly, so deeper diving submarines are much harder to detect. Because of this, the P3 is most effective at low altitudes, forcing it to fly at 500 feet or lower, while it follows a systematic grid search pattern. This is a useful tool that appears in every large Navy arsenal, but for every military technology that develops, a counter is also developed. Not all metals are ferromagnetic.
Is the client's project on budget? We're probably over, but by how much? I'll take tomorrow to figure it out before he asks.
Not all metals are ferromagnetic. Titanium is diamagnetic, meaning it has an extremely weak effect on magnetic fields. So building a submarine out of it is extremely appealing. There's only one problem. Submarines are gigantic, and we can't easily weld titanium because it oxidizes extremely quickly when exposed to heat. This was a problem that Grumman faced while manufacturing the F-14's titanium wing box. Grumman had to custom build an electron beam welding device that removed oxygen from the built area and provided the heat necessary for welding with a concentrated beam of electrons. Now imagine how confused the United States was when reports began to emerge of Russian submarines with hulls made entirely out of titanium. In 1969, sightings began to emerge in the Never River of new ultra-small nuclear-powered submarines. At just 79 meters long, it was the world's smallest nuclear submarine at that time. But that wasn't the most unusual thing about it. Its reserve buoyancy was about 3 times higher than that of American equivalent submarines, meaning about 30% of its volume lay above the water's surface when its ballast tanks were emptied. And its surface was much more reflective than a typical steel hull. Both of these facts pointed towards the Soviets using a new material, titanium. If this was true, it was a major technological development. titanium strength to weight ratio would allow the submarine to be lighter, smaller, stronger, faster, and capable of diving even deeper than its steel counterparts, while being extremely difficult to detect with magnetic anomaly detectors. This news shook CIA analysts. A submarine that could dive deeper and avoid being detected was a major advantage. How were the Russians building something this big out of titanium? Many didn't believe it was possible, and the original theorist, Herb Lord, spent the final decade of his life trying and failing to prove it. Analysts believed it was possible for the Soviets to weld smaller titanium parts in hermetically sealed chambers, in a similar way to the F-14's wing box, which also began production in 1969. We are now sure that they did indeed manage to build titanium submarines, something other nations have not managed to duplicate, which is likely why there is essentially no public information available on how they did it. Some websites claim that the Soviets hermetically sealed the entire indoor shipyard and had workers enter through airlocks with what were essentially spacesuits, with their welding equipment in hand. But a search of CIA documents do not support that claim. I would personally assume they created some sort of localized method of sealing off atmospheric air from the weld zone, with some sort of airtight attachment or smaller chambers like the one Grumman created. Creating airtight seals in a small space is hard enough. Doing it at shipyard scale, with all of the contamination that comes with an industrial setting, just does not seem possible to me. This is a truly remarkable achievement, something the US deemed too difficult and high cost to even attempt. But with any new novel threat like this comes a counter. This submarine could travel at 40 knots while submerged, faster than any NATO submarine, and somehow faster than any torpedo too. The Mark 48 torpedo was developed as a result, capable of traveling at 55 knots. It uses a fuel specifically formulated for torpedoes called autofuel. It's a pretty amazing red monopropellant, meaning the fuel and oxidizer are combined into a single mixture. It was specifically formulated to be stored inside torpedoes for years without any issue. And surprisingly, it's pretty hard to ignite, considered non-flammable and non-explosive under most circumstances, which is unique for a monopropellant and important for a device designed to operate deep under the sea. The torpedo also has a unique propulsion system. It uses something called an axial flow liquid propellant swash plate pump jet engine. That's a lot of words that you probably understand individually, but when combined, it becomes a bit of an engineering riddle. Axial simply means the pistons are parallel to the drive shaft, helping reduce the cross-sectional area of the torpedo without sacrificing piston head volume. But this means we need to replace the camshaft that converts the reciprocating motion of the pistons into rotational motion in the drive shaft. For this, we need a swash plate. These 6 pistons then drive the 2 contra-rotating propellers that are shrouded by this ducting and nozzle. This is a pump jet, making...
We're Phoenix Energy, a family-owned oil company focused on unleashing American oil from North Dakota and Montana. We've already sold over...
This is a pump jet, making this torpedo a scary adversary for any submarine. But first, it needs to find its enemy. It has active and passive homing sonar for this purpose. And when it's first fired, a wire follows it out from the torpedo tube that connects it to the submarine's superior sonar. Its target is to strike near the midriff of the ship. This is a big torpedo with a massive warhead. When it explodes, it's capable of breaking the back of even the strongest titanium submarine. This is what it looks like when it finds its target. Here, it is striking the Australian destroyer HMAS Torrens in 1999. And here it is striking the American USS Fletcher during a 2008 RIMPAC exercise. Once a submarine is found, it's not a safe place to be. This is why so much of the battle against submarines revolves around detection and tracking. Much of the major advancements in submarines have revolved around reducing their audio and magnetic signatures, but a new technology has joined the race that needs neither. Space-based synthetic aperture radar, or SAR, and in 2023, China launched 4 satellites that utilized this technology over the Western Pacific to monitor sea traffic. This technology is honestly pretty insane because they aren't just detecting surface movement. They can detect submarines under the surface by looking for their distinctive wakes that travel to the surface. To do that, the radar has to have excellent resolution to picture fine details, which can be difficult for typical radar, as resolution is directly related to the length of the radar's antenna. The equation to calculate the length of antenna needed for a particular spatial resolution is pretty simple. This is the radar wavelength. A lower wavelength results in a shorter antenna. This is the altitude. A higher altitude results in a longer antenna. And this is the spatial resolution needed. Let's say we want a 1 meter resolution with X-band radar. That would need an antenna 25.5 kilometers long. Oh shit. This length is called the aperture, and that's the first clue to how synthetic aperture radars work. They take advantage of the satellite's altitude to create a virtual aperture, basically like a long exposure on a regular camera. As the satellite moves forward, it continuously sends radar pulses and records the echoes. Each pulse overlaps, and the radar will record the same object multiple times from slightly different angles. These pulse returns are then processed and combined, giving us incredible high-detail 3D maps of the world and the ability to detect submarines by the waves they make from space. Technology is catching up with traditional submarines in other ways too. Remember that drone we charged underwater in China's model of the Great Acoustic Wall? That may well be the way of the future. Take Northrop Grumman's Manta Ray drone, which you can see docked on Google Maps right now. It's the true future of underwater warfare. Drones are all the rage right now, but their effects are going to be most pronounced under the sea. Removing people from the equation changes everything. Drones never need to surface. With those underwater power cables, we can recharge them at a hub and have the drones continuously patrol their area. With no need for crushable air inside the hull, we can get more creative with our design choices. First, we can switch from metal to reinforced plastics and lower our magnetic signature. We can use batteries with near-silent electric motors to massively reduce our audio signature. And when needed, they can anchor themselves to the seafloor, turn off all of their major functions, and just enter listening mode. No need for a great wall when you could have a great swarm. These autonomous electric submarines are likely going to make crude submarines the thing of the past in the not-too-distant future. Keeping on top of changing technology is important for any industry, and today's sponsor, Onshape, fixes a lot of the problems I faced when I was working as a design engineer. Onshape is a fully cloud-based CAD platform, meaning there's no software to install and no outdated.
It's pretty amazing the advancements in submarine technology and submarine surveillance technology. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and take a look at this stack that I'm going to be talking about, which will help with your musculature and your cardiovascular health and your immune system. Let's start with olive leaf extract. Olive leaf extract will lower inflammation and also help to bring down LDL levels and increase your HDL levels. So it's going to improve your lipid profile. By lowering inflammation, you're helping your cardiovascular health because you're reducing plaque buildup, but you're also helping your immune system by bringing down inflammation. In addition, olive leaf extract, by improving your lipid profile, is going to reduce plaque buildup. So get the olive leaf extract. It's a dual purpose product. You can take it separately or you can take the stack. That's very helpful for you. So take a look at the olive leaf extract, use it every day. Now, a great product that I have is omega-3. Omega-3 brings down systemic inflammation. So that's going to help with your immune system, but it's great for your cardiovascular health. Omega-3 also prevents red blood cells from sticking too much. So it's going to prevent overclotting. And omega-3 helps with the lipid profile, brings down LDL levels and helps to boost up your HDL levels. So you're reducing the chance of plaque buildup. So these stack really well together. Now, as you get older, you need to maintain muscle mass and gain muscle mass. Taking Myotrol will help you do that. This has flavonoids, lignans, and polyphenols that help with the gene expression to build muscle. Do some resistance training, take Myotrol, and it'll help to build muscle and to maintain muscle. Really important if you're 40 years old, 40 years of age or older to take Myotrol every day. Also, Myotrol will help with the health of your mitochondria. And because of the lignans in this, it will help to bring down inflammation. Now, Myotrol can also be used for people that are athletes, younger or older, to help build muscle. So take Myotrol every day, maintain and build muscle, very important, especially when you're age 40 years or older. And stacking this, where you're helping your immune system, you're helping your cardiovascular system, and you're building muscle at the same time. So a great anti-aging stack that will help to target multiple systems. So go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, use discount 5 and you get $5 off any order. And if you spend $150 or more on an order, you'll get a free gift until supplies last. Please go to my store, get the Myotrol, get the omega-3, get the olive leaf extract, stack them to get the max benefit. You can take them separately, it's up to you. But like I said, if you stack them the way I'm telling you to stack them, you're going to be targeting multiple systems. With that said, let's take a look at some of the other news that's going on. Let's go to CNN. They're talking about supply chain expert reacting to Warren Buffett's criticism of Trump's tariffs.
With my family schedules under control, we can actually spend time together. Skylight Calendar is the perfect Mother's Day gift, and it really makes me feel seen. No more.
A new round of tariffs is expected to have a major impact on the auto industry. And starting today, nearly all imported auto parts will come with a 25% import tax. And that levy does not protect cars made in America. Not one of the 10 million cars to come out of US plants last year was built without at least some imported parts. And while consumers may not see any price hikes right away, experts estimate the tariffs could ultimately add about $4,000 to the cost of vehicle. CNN's Julia Vargas Jones is joining us now live from the Port of Los Angeles. Julia, how soon could consumers start to feel these impacts?
Well, like you said, Jessica, for those full cars, if you're buying a new car, it might not be right away, but if you need a repair in any of the parts for your car in the next weeks, you might be able to notice a little jump on the prices already. But we're also hitting another milestone this week. You know, those tariffs that went into place on April 9th for all of the ships that were leaving China, all of those ships have already arrived here now. We're seeing the first wave of merchandise that's arriving from China that is subject to that 145% tariff. And that is already having an impact here in the Port of Los Angeles, the largest port in the United States. A lot of merchandise from China comes in through right here. We spoke with the executive director of the port, Jim Soroka, who said they're already seeing a 35% drop in arrivals for next week. So we are already seeing an impact. The importers are saying we're going to wait and see what happens with these tariffs first, and then we'll make decisions as to what to do. But in the meantime, what do you do if you have merchandise that's arriving, you already paid for it, now you have to pay the tariff? Well, one way that business owners are going around this is looking at bonded warehouses. These are spaces that are completely legal in U.S. soil. They're really close to ports like this one, where you can store your merchandise for up to 5 years and you don't have to pay taxes or tariffs on it until you take that merchandise out, presumably when you've already made a sale. We actually caught up with one of the business owners who runs one of these places. Take a listen to what she said.
This was the first big shipment, one of 2 containers, 40-foot containers that came in, products from China that we're offloading, and we're going to put it, that side of our warehouse is the bonded side. And so we can't go in that side. This part is called a tax paid side. So all this product is subject to taxes and duties. So yeah, so right now they're just offloading that product. They're going to put it all on pallets. So it comes in on just in boxes on the floor of the container. They put it on pallets, take it back. They're going to stack those pallets as high as we can get them. And then we wait for our instructions.
And Jessica, those merchandise that you're looking at, that it's all sorts of things. It's all things from parts from guitars that are going to be assembled and made in America to stationery, kitchen utensils, spatulas, strollers, all sorts of things now not going to be going to shelves, right? So that could cause all sorts of other troubles as these business owners are kind of taking a gamble, right? They're saying, we hope that talks with China will go well, and therefore tariffs will go down by the time that we find buyers for our merchandise and have to pay that tax on it.
We shall see. Julia Vargas Jones, thank you so much for that. Famed investor and CEO of Berkshire Hathaway, Warren Buffett.
All right, before we go to Warren Buffett, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the structural nano silver gel. This is a dual purpose product. You can get it in two different types, the tube form or in the quick dispenser. Have some at work, have some at home. You never know when you need it. If you have an abrasion, a cut, a minor burn, put it on there. It'll help to heal. You can use it as a daily skincare. You can use it as an aftershave. And if you're not feeling well, or you're around someone that's not feeling well, put it on your hands, around your mouth, around your nose, around your eyes, around your ears, lightly coat your nostrils. It stays active for 5.5 hours. Have some available. You never know when you need it. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the structural nano silver gel. Again, you can use it as an aftershave. And for people that don't know, if you have nasal congestion or copious nasal drip, you can put this in your, lightly coat your nostrils, and it'll help to reduce that inflammation and that soreness, but also help to slow down the nasal drip. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the structural nano silver gel.
Thoughts on the trade war for the first time today. Speaking this morning at his company's shareholder meeting, the Oracle of Omaha called tariffs and trade wars a big mistake.
There's no question the trade can be an act of war, and I think it's led to bad things. Just the attitudes that's brought out in the United States. I mean, we should be looking to trade with the rest of the world, and we should do what we do best, and they should do what they do best.
Jack Buffington is the director of the supply chain program at the University of Denver. He joins us now with more. Jack, thanks so much for being here with us. First, I do want to get your thoughts on what Warren Buffett had to say today. We also learned that the 94-year-old will be stepping down as the head of Berkshire Hathaway at the end of the year. So just first to get your reaction about his comments and also this news that he will be retiring.
Thanks, Jessica. Well, obviously Warren Buffett is a legend, and I absolutely agree with his points on tariffs. I think
he's a legend, but he's also an insider trader that just doesn't get caught.
And they create market volatility. And one thing that I think was fantastic about Warren Buffett is his focus on value. His focus on value within companies and economies. We also both agree that manufacturing is the segment that has the most value. So for every dollar of manufacturing activity, there's $2.70 returned back to that economy. So I think Warren Buffett and I would agree that we need to have a more robust manufacturing economy. Not sure if tariffs are the way to get there, though.
And listen, you're an expert in the supply chain. I think Americans got really familiar with all of that during COVID and how disruptions can cause major problems and disruptions in the supply chain.
Let me just interrupt here. So Port Sudan attack by a drone. We're starting to see, since 2000, I guess it was 2022, the use of drone warfare in the battle space. And it's even happening in Sudan right now.
The scene for us about what we're about to experience. We were just talking to our colleague Julia, who's there at the Port of Los Angeles. Set the scene for us. What is the supply chain about to look like? How's that going to affect people out there watching?
Yeah, so one thing that was mentioned.
With the help of Xero's small business accounting software, I've got the right information at my fingertips. So business is a breeze.
Your dream match
mattress is within reach. Shop the Memorial Day mattress sale at Raymore and Flanagan Sleep Center. Combined sale pricing with interest-free financing for up to 72 months. Don't miss early Memorial Day mattress deals at Raymore and Flanagan.
Yeah, so one thing that was mentioned at the ports is the decline in containers. So there's something in supply chains called there's something that's called blank sailing. So a blank sailing is when an ocean cargo ship makes an appointment for a voyage and then cancels that. 2 weeks ago, blank sailings were 34%. Last week, blank sailings were 42%. These are record level of blank sailings. They're even higher than the blank sailings were at the beginning of the COVID pandemic. So we're about to see major disruptions at retail. I think consumers should expect to see some supply outages. They should see some price increases. I think the areas that will probably be most affected with consumers is consumer electronics, furniture, and apparels.
And so people should expect that to happen soon, in the coming weeks.
So these retailers built up inventory in 2025 expecting that this was going to happen. Now the problem, of course, with building up inventory is that costs money, and the supply chains are long tail, so there's a limit on how much inventory you can build up. So I think there's some of the big retailers are going to try to manage that. I think the small retailers are going to struggle the most. So there's just going to be a lot of disruption, and we'll just have to see what's going to happen. But with these blank sailings, and blank sailings are a sign that manufacturers in Asia are not producing, so they're not loading containers, and containers aren't coming back to the United States.
President Trump has said that his tariffs are part of what he calls his plan to bring a new golden age to the American economy. And he's acknowledged that there's going to be short-term pain, and he says it will be worth it. This is what he told NBC's Meet the Press.
Are you comfortable with the country potentially dipping into a recession for a period of time if you are able to achieve your long-term goals?
Well, you say some people on Wall Street say, well, I can tell you something else. Some people on Wall Street say that we're going to have the greatest economy in history.
Is it okay in the short term to have a recession?
Look, yes, everything's okay.
At this point, do you think there is an increasing likelihood of a recession?
Well, if we look at what happened with the first Trump administration, when they put in place tariffs, they were limited and they were targeted, and supply chains found ways around it through transshipments and other ways of doing things. These tariffs are much more broad sweeping, and there's fewer loopholes to get around. So I think there is going to be supply chain disruption, of course. If there's a strategy to do more assembling and production in the United States, that's a good thing. These things don't happen overnight. So I think there is, a pretty significant risk of the economy, going into some sort of decline.
All right. On that note, Jack Buffington, thanks so much for your time. We appreciate it.
Don't bet against America. Make sure you've been following my live streams during the New York trading session or the Asian trading session. I've been telling you how to benefit from it. And if you were paying attention to me, you would have gained anywhere from 10 to 18% return on new deployed money into the S&P 500. And that's a fact. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the structural nano silver toothpaste. This will whiten your teeth, freshen your breath, reduce inflammation, help to improve the health of your gum line, and with good oral hygiene, it helps with your cardiovascular health and your valvular health. This is the best toothpaste you can get. You can't get a better toothpaste. This has no fluoride in it. It has structural nanosilver, and like I said, you can't get a better toothpaste. So get a few tubes of this toothpaste for your household. Use discount 5 and you get $5 off any order. It's all caps, discount 5, get $5 off. If you spend $150 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. So go to my store, get a few tubes of this toothpaste for your household. It's a very high quality toothpaste. It's the best you can buy. Now let's talk about some other stacks that are really important to do. Clarity factor will help to reduce that brain fog. It'll get rid of that brain fog and allow you to focus on work or in school, or even if you're retired, to allow you to focus on tasks. And by improving that neurotransmission and the release of those neurotransmitters, you're going to think faster and you're going to be supporting your memory. Your memory is going to improve and your sleep is going to improve. All right, so take this every day. If you are at work or you're in school and you have very high cognitive load type work, engineers, let's say, you're studying medicine or you're studying law or studying engineering, whatever. You may want to be taking this so you can concentrate, for hours on end, and you won't have that brain fog. Make sure you drink it with filtered water, really important. Now, by taking this every day, you're going to start to improve and speed up your thinking, and you're going to have better memory. So please go to my store, take the Clarity Factor, really important. Now, another great supplement that will help with neural health and other cellular and tissues is C60. C60 is a very strong, potent antioxidant. You can get it in avocado oil, MCT coconut oil, or in extra virgin olive oil. C60 is a carbon molecule at 60 carbons connected together, looking like a soccer ball or a fullerene. And its electron shell shimmers, and because of the unique properties of carbons connected together, it's going to allow you to soak up free radicals and neutralize them hundreds of times, if not 1,000 times more than vitamin C. So one molecule of C60 is going to soak up hundreds of times more than vitamin C, if not 1,000 times more. So take a teaspoon a day on an empty stomach for best absorption. If you work out, take it before your workout. It's going to soak up the free radicals during your workout, and you're going to recover quicker from your workout. All right? Take it every day, teaspoon a day. You can get it in a 2 ounce, a 4 ounce, or an 8 ounce configuration. It is cheaper on my store to purchase the higher ounce configuration because it's cheaper per ounce. So get the C60, take it every day, and what you're going to notice is it's going to be soaking up those free radicals. It's reducing the stress on the cell and the tissue, so your organ systems and your glands, and your immune system, your endocrine system, and even your neurons will perform better. And by soaking up those free radicals, your mitochondria is going to perform better. Therefore, you're going to have more energy in the cell. The cellular processes will be better. You're just going to have more energy. And what's going to happen is you're going to slow down the aging process. And you're going to be boosting up your immune system, helping your endocrine system, and boosting up your neural health. Now, by soaking up those free radicals in your neuron, again, you're reducing the stress on the neuron. You're helping the health of the neuron because you're bringing down that stress. You are boosting up those ATP levels. You need lots of mitochondria and neurons to create neurotransmitters and to fire those neurotransmitters. So you have a better, healthy population of mitochondria in the neuron. You have more neurotransmitters created, and it's going to be firing, and therefore you're going to have more positive neuroplasticity. So taking C60 and the Clarity Factor is going to help boost up those neurons. Really important when you get older. C60 also stacks really well with resveratrol, NAD+, and ubiquinol. So please go to my store, get the C60, slow down the aging process, boost up your energy levels, and help your immune system, your endocrine system, and your neural system. It also helps with your cardiovascular system. You know how? By bringing down free radicals in your bloodstream, you're reducing oxidized LDL. When you reduce oxidized LDL, you're reducing plaque formation. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Take this every day. It's very important. It's the second pillar of my core protocol. Max 35, Max 14 are cleanse for the first pillar to boost up your immune system. C60 is the second pillar to soak up those free radicals. The third pillar is turmeric, ashwagandha, and lignans to boost up your immune system and your cardiovascular health. And Boomer Boost to boost up those energy levels and your metabolism. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the C60. Obviously it works. I've been taking this since 2016. It's a very important supplement to add. to your protocol. It's a cornerstone. So it's make sure you are taking this every day. Make sure you use discount 5 and you get $5 off any order. If you spend $150 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. All right. All right, let's go to live now here.
Russian President Putin is saying in comments earlier today that the need to use nuclear weapons in Ukraine has not yet arisen and that he hopes that it will not. So this is a preview of an upcoming interview with Russian state television in which Putin said that Russia has the strength and the means to bring the conflict in Ukraine to a, quote, logical conclusion, adding there has been no need to use those nuclear weapons, and I hope they will not be required. Also stating we have enough strength and means to bring what was started in 2022 to a logical conclusion with the outcome Russia requires. Now, Putin signed a revamped version of Russia's nuclear doctrine back in November of 2024, spelling out the circumstances that allow him to use the country's atomic arsenal, which is the world's largest. That version lowered the bar, giving Putin the option in response to even a conventional attack backed by a nuclear power. Russia and Ukraine are also at odds over competing ceasefire proposals. Ukrainian President Zelensky saying in comments made public Saturday that Russia's announcement of a 72-hour ceasefire next week in Ukraine to mark Victory Day in World War II is merely an attempt to create a, quote, soft atmosphere ahead of Russia's annual celebrations. Zelensky instead renewed calls for a more substantial 30-day pause in hostilities, as the U.S. had initially proposed, saying that the proposed ceasefire could start any time as a meaningful step toward ending the war. This also comes after Kyiv and Washington signed a long-anticipated agreement granting U.S. access to Ukraine's mineral resources. So this is a live look right here in Prague, as we are expecting Zelensky to be meeting with the president of the Czech Republic. To speak more on this, I do want to bring in David DeFury, who is a former State Department official, also right now in Ukraine. David, we appreciate you joining us from Ukraine live here on this Sunday morning.
Thanks so much for having me.
So you're in Ukraine at the moment. You know, we were sharing with our viewers a live look of Ukrainian Zelensky in Prague. He's going to be meeting with the president there of the Czech Republic. You know, before we get into Putin's comments, you know, can you talk about the significance of this meeting today, but between the two leaders?
Sure. As your footage demonstrated, I think he's getting a warm reception in the Czech Republic. It's an official visit. They're doing all of the pomp and circumstance that recognizes the importance of President Zelensky and Ukraine to Czech Republic, to the people of the Czech Republic. Obviously, the Czech Republic fought against a Russian invasion in 1968. They were under the thumb of the Soviet Union for many years, and so they understand the danger that Russia poses under the leadership of Vladimir Putin, and that's why Czech Republic has been such a strong supporter of Ukraine. And it's, of course, very important for Zelensky to shore up support from European countries like the Czech Republic, especially if the U.S. is going to decrease its support under the Trump administration.
So let's also talk about what Putin commented on. You know, it's pretty stunning, I have to say, when he's discussing nuclear weapons, saying, you know, there has been no need circumstances. Would he actually move forward with any of this?
So there's what Putin says and then what he actually means, and rarely are they the same thing. And in this case, what Putin is probably doing is trying to remind the world, especially America and especially Europe, that he has nuclear weapons and he can use them if he wants. So it's a veiled threat against the US and Europe, and it shows a tinge of desperation because he recognizes that with the minerals agreement, with renewed goodwill between the U.S. and Ukraine. The U.S. may continue to provide weapons and significant training and other support to Ukraine, and that's very worrisome for Russia. Although Putin wants to suggest that they're in a position of strength, they are not in a position of strength, especially if the U.S. maintains steadfast support for Ukraine and Europe steps up and provides more support. Russia is losing so many soldiers. It's spending 40% of its government budget on the military, and it can't keep that up forever.
So he's making these bold statements. I have to imagine that the U.S. would not let it get to that point. What is the end goal for Putin then? I mean, he's waving this threat around, but it's unlikely that he will actually act along those lines. So what is the end goal? Is he just trying to show strength as he's in, as you mentioned, a precarious situation right now?
I think this is a hand he knows he can play. He knows President Biden was very worried about an escalation to nuclear war, and he knows President Trump is as worried as Biden was, if not more. And so that's the hand he's trying to play. He's trying to remind President Trump of this threat. That's why he's doing it. Were he to use nuclear weapons, there would be such significant repercussions on Russia and Putin that I think he also worries about whether he could actually use them. So he's threatening to use them, but he knows that it could mean the end of Putin, his leadership of Russia, were he to choose to use them.
And I just wanted to point out to our viewers, as you and I are having a discussion happening right now in Prague, we do see Ukrainian President Zelensky right there with the Czech Republic president, as we were talking about strong allies as the conflict with Russia continues right here. Also part of this is the minerals deal that Zelensky signed with the Trump administration. How significant is this agreement, and what does this mean when it comes to the ongoing conflict?
Well, the most significant thing about this agreement is the fact that it was not signed before had become a thorn in the relationship between the U.S. and Ukraine. And now that it is signed, they have that behind them, and it is no longer something that divides our two countries. The agreement itself is in some ways more symbolic than implementable at this time, because it's going to take years to do the type of investment necessary to extract minerals from Ukraine, but it does also show that the U.S. has a significant financial and economic interest in ensuring that Ukraine is successful in defending its sovereignty. And so it's important in that manner as well. And it could be the first of many agreements between the U.S. and Ukraine that draw the two countries closer together.
There's also this temporary ceasefire that's set to take place in the coming week, 72 hours. Ukrainian President Zelensky pushing for a 30-day ceasefire. This is a step perhaps in the right direction, but as we take a look at the larger picture, do you feel like a longer ceasefire is even in the realm of possibility?
Well, President Zelensky has said he wants a 30-day ceasefire that will lead to a longer ceasefire. Putin has refused. Now, Putin recently said, as you mentioned, he wants to have a 3-day ceasefire around the celebrations in Russia of the anniversary of the success and the victory of the Soviet Union over Nazi Germany. And so this is really a ceasefire out of convenience for Russia so that they can have those celebrations uninterrupted. Oftentimes, leaders from other countries come to Moscow for those celebrations, so he doesn't want them to experience, attacks from Ukraine. But 3 days is not really in Ukraine's interest, so we don't know whether Ukraine is going to agree to it and observe it.
So, taking a look at the larger picture, you yourself are in Ukraine at the moment. What is the mood there? What is the sense that you're getting as you actually have boots on the ground?
Well, I just got here, so I'm getting a sense of that, and I will have a better sense over the days and weeks to come as I'll be here for a while. But I think that there's, a lot of trepidation about the recent events, and things are changing very quickly politically in the countries that help Ukraine. In the U.S., President Trump has a different, view towards Ukraine, and so people are worried about the possibility that President Trump, despite the minerals agreement and renewed goodwill between our countries, could decline the amount of weapons and support that he provides to Ukraine. So they're very worried about that. There are new prime ministers in other countries, Canada and Australia. President Zelensky just had talks with Australia. So I think people here are very hopeful that other countries around the world and new leaders in some of the countries that have supported Ukraine will recognize the importance of this effort. People are war weary here in Ukraine, but they're still committed to defend the country. And I don't see any easing of the commitment of the Ukrainian people, the Ukrainian government, to fight until the end, until they've successfully defended their country and they have sovereignty, or they have a ceasefire that's on their terms that are palatable to the people of Ukraine.
All right, David, we appreciate you joining us live.
We're going to go
from
to
on the-
we're going to go to Professor Mearsheimer on India, China. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the collagen. The collagen is a multi-purpose supplement. You get a very impressive amino acid profile here shown on the screen. You can look at the label on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Take collagen to help improve your skin, your hair, and your nails, but it also helps to build muscle, improve your joint health, your cartilage, and your bone structure. So do resistance training, take the collagen every day. You get a big scooper, mix it with soft foods, drink it with filtered water, mix it with a smoothie. You can add it in milk. I put it in soft foods like hummus, but take it every day, really important. You can also help to improve your skin by taking the collagen separately, but it works even better when you take it with the vitamin C and magnesium that I have and drink the filtered water, about 64 ounces, so it'll cross-link to improve your dermal layer. Use the structural nanosilver gel for topical health of the skin, and C60 and resveratrol will help the basal layer of your skin. You can get those items in my anti-aging skincare box, either beginners or advanced. So take a look at that if you would like to really supercharge your skin. So go to my store, get the collagen, take it every day. It's dual purpose. Make sure that you do resistance training. So you're helping with your joints and your muscles and your bones, but also your skin. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Use discount 5 and you get $5 off.
Well, Iran, I mean, it's clear that there has been a lot of discontent within Iran. The society is not just this simple, obedient, theocratic state. There is resistance to Khomeini and to the regime. Iran could collapse more quickly than Israel, surely.
There's no question that there's centrifugal forces at play inside Iran. But the question I have for you is, okay, what do you suggest we do?
Well, maybe help it collapse, let it collapse.
And how do we do that?
It's a difficult question to answer.
I mean, the Israeli solution is to bomb Iran, a massive air offensive involving the United States and Israel against Iran. First of all, I think, if anything, that will cause a rally around the flag effect in Iran, and it will work in exactly an opposite way from the one you're describing. But furthermore, when you get into the business of social engineering on the foreign policy front, Freddie, you invariably get yourself into huge trouble. You want to remember, we tried to do social engineering in Afghanistan. How well did that work out? We tried to do social engineering in Iraq. How well did that work out? We tried to do social engineering in Libya. How well did that work out? I could go on and on.
Vietnam.
I learned Vietnam, exactly. You know, I cut my teeth on Vietnam. I was in the American military from 1965 to 1975, which was coterminous with the Vietnam War. I learned in those years that you want to stay out of places like Vietnam. If you think you can go into countries like Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, and do social engineering, you're going to get yourself into one hell of a lot of trouble. And I would note to you, Freddie, the Soviets went into Afghanistan before we went in, and that did not work out very well. And the British were in Afghanistan before the Soviets, and that did not work out very well. And the French were in Vietnam before we were in there, and that did not work out very well. And oh, by the way, after we left Vietnam in 1975 and 1979, the Chinese invaded Vietnam, and they got their snouts whacked. You want to stay out of these countries. You don't want to get involved in social engineering. And you certainly don't want to get involved in social engineering at the end of a rifle barrel.
Well, that is something, again, going back to your point about Trump's instinct, that's something that the Trump administration appears to understand much more clearly than its predecessors.
Absolutely. I think that Trump's basic instincts on foreign policy, the issues that I know about and care about deeply, are correct. His instincts are correct. It's the execution where you run into big trouble. Execution is terribly important, Freddie, in large part because these are incredibly complicated problems. I mean, one of Trump's fundamental mistakes to start with this time around was that he thought that he could deal with the problems rather easily. If you listen to him talk about Ukraine, he thought that he could come in and he could shut down the Ukraine war in a day or two. Indeed, he was talking about shutting down the Ukraine war even before he moved into the White House. Anybody who's studied the Ukraine conflict and US-Russia relations knows that shutting down this conflict and improving relations with the Russians is going to involve a Herculean effort. It's almost impossible to figure out how you can do this. Maybe you can do it, but it's going to be a very difficult task. But Trump was quite flippant in his views about how easy it would be. And he's now finding out it's not easy. And the same thing goes with Iran. And the same thing goes with the Israel-Palestine conflict. And the same thing goes with tariffs. These are really tricky issues. The reason that we rely on experts, and President Trump does not like experts, he prefers to rely on his instincts, as he said when he talked about how he makes tariff policy, prefers to rely on instincts. You can't rely on instincts. You have to rely on experts because these are incredibly complicated issues. I mean, Trump is the ultimate decider, and there's no question about that, and that's the way it should be. But he should be listening to people who have studied these problems and letting them help him figure out how to get out of these problems. But he has not done that.
You mentioned earlier about how...
Meet the new standard in sleep. This is Podcore Ultra. It's not a bed, it's a revolution in the sleep game.
The problem
you mentioned earlier about how...
I like listening to different opinions, even though I don't agree with them. But the problem that I have with Mearsheimer, that I listen to quite often, is that he has analysis paralysis. Give me a solution. What's the solution? All he does is whine about why things don't work. What's the solution? And being a pacifist is not the solution. Analysis paralysis.
One of the difficult things about foreign policy is that it's very hard to keep one's eye on the same ball when there are so many different balls moving around. And this is particularly hard for American presidents and White House administrations. One story that's sort of popped up, really, it's been rumbling for a very long time, about this terrible terrorist attack in India, and has now triggered a potentially nuclear conflict that Western analysts often just sort of forget about because we're so focused on the Middle East and Ukraine more recently, and perhaps China and Taiwan. But if India and Pakistan go to war, that is a conflict that, does America have any way of trying to moderate that conflict?
You know, it's funny, Freddie, but I was at a conference at Yale on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday that was devoted to India. And right before the conference started, the terrorist attack in Kashmir took place. So I have been thinking, for obvious reasons, about the India-Pakistan conflict over the past few days. Just to buttress your point, it's very interesting. It's hard to find serious discussion of this conflict
The Pakistan and Indian conflicts, especially with the nuclear proliferation, is the exact reason why the United States needs to knock out Iran's nuclear capability and decapitate the Ayatollah. Professor Mearsheimer. Come on.
The newspapers these days, because there are all sorts of other issues like Ukraine, Iran, tariffs, and so forth and so on that dominate. So this issue has been pushed off to the side in a very important way, because not only President Trump, but all of us can only deal with so many issues at the same time. Now, this is a very dangerous situation. These are two nuclear-armed countries that have a history of fighting wars. And in the past, the United States has intervened in crises between these two countries to go to great lengths to shut them down. Mainly what we've tried to do is make sure that the Indians didn't launch a major attack against Pakistan, which would then lead Pakistan maybe to use nuclear weapons. But you don't have the sense that the Trump administration is paying careful attention to this conflict, or that President Trump will intervene in a major way to dampen down the tensions the way previous presidents have, because he's so busy on so many other fronts. So it could be the case, let's hope this is not the case, that this one could spin out of control and you could have a real war, and nuclear weapons might even be used. Because you want to remember, Freddie, if you look at the conventional balance of power between Pakistan and India, it greatly favors the Indians. And we've always feared that a conflict that started off at the conventional level would escalate to the nuclear level, because the Pakistanis would feel compelled to turn to nuclear weapons if they were losing conventionally, which we expected to happen. None of this is to say that in the past or even now, a war will happen and nuclear weapons will be used. But the fact is, there is real potential for a real war, and there is real potential for nuclear use. And in that kind of situation, you want President Trump, you want the United States to be deeply involved in trying to settle this short of a shooting match. But I don't have the sense that that's what we're doing. Maybe we are, and I'm just not reading about it. Let's hope that's the case. But this is just another example of another ball in the air.
Well, I wonder if you were pretty down on tariffs earlier, but I wonder if this is an area where tariffs can give America substantial negotiating leverage. I mean, J.D. Vance visited India last week. Last night, Trump suggested that a free trade deal was on the horizon. I don't know whether the situation in Kashmir has been part of those discussions. I don't think anybody has said so publicly. But surely America could say, you might want to hold off retaliating, or you might want to do what we want in this conflict, or this free trade deal that we are now in the process of agreeing will be out the window.
Managing your business doesn't have to take up your mornings. With Zero, you can handle it all before your morning coffee. When I first started my real estate business, I found myself buried in admin, tracking expenses, chasing people.
I don't think we would do that. I think relations between the Trump administration and the Modi administration are very good, and we're not likely to play hardball with Modi in the way you just described. But maybe that's the case. I do agree with your general point that although I think that tariffs, the way they were implemented, made no sense, I do think that the possibility of walking back the tariffs does give us leverage over allies.
I can't believe that Mearsheimer did not see that Trump was trying to isolate China by having trade agreements with allied nations, especially around the Pacific Rim. And by isolating China, it's almost like a sanction. But he doesn't mention it. Like I said, analysis paralysis. And he served in the military, and he doesn't want to blow up anything. What the hell? What's wrong with him? Please go up. please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the vitamin D3. This will help to absorb calcium. It helps with gene expression, so your cells will perform properly. It helps to get rid of cells that need to go into apoptosis. It helps with your cardiovascular and helps with your bone density. It has higher efficacy when you take magnesium, so please go to my store and take a look at the vitamin C magnesium, magnesium and zinc, or the Boomer Boost that has magnesium in it. Take the vitamin D3 every day, really important, but you get even more benefit when you stack it with vitamin K2 and K7 molecule. This will help to absorb the calcium and help with bone density and cardiovascular health. They work together, all right? Stack them together. So if you want to help with your cardiovascular health, take the D3 and the K2. What it will do is it help to pull out some of that calcium depositing around plaque and help to prevent new calcium depositing from forming around plaque. If you do a resistance training, then what's going to happen is you're going to build more bone density. So you take the D3, the K2, have some calcium supplementation or drink milk like how I do it. Do that resistance training and you're going to build bone density. But building bone density, you don't just do it with resistance training, with weight lifts, but you also need to produce a vibration through your bone. So the best way to do it, no matter what age you are, is to do calf lifts. So you lift your toes up, and you lift your heel up, and you're supporting your body on your toes, right? And you do 50 of those. Be on a hard floor and have your heel come down, and do that 50 times, and you're creating a vibration through your leg up into your hip and up through your spine. And what that's going to do, you do that every day, 50 a day. Take the D3, the K2, take calcium supplementation, do resistance training, do those vibration exercises. And what is going to happen is you're creating a microenvironment where you're depositing new bone. And over time, you're going to increase your bone density. Really important, okay? So to supercharge bone density creation, you need that vibration exercise. Now, to help with your collarbone and your sternum and your arms, right, and build more bone density there, a great way to build that bone density is obviously doing resistance training, but also you can ride a bike outside, and you'll notice that when you're going over an uneven surface, you're getting a little bit of that vibration through the handlebars into your arms, and that's going to help to create that microenvironment to build more bone density or in those areas. So it's really important, resistance training and vibration exercises in those bones to speed up bone density. Now, in terms of cardiovascular health, like I said, take the D3, the K2, that's going to help to reduce calcium depositing around plaque and help to pull out the plaque over time, pull out that calcium deposits around plaque. But also take the nattokinase. When you have plaque, it's going to cause turbulent flow that leads to clot formation. You don't want that. That's bad. So what you want is to take the nattokinase. It's going to break up the clots, but it'll also help to bring down the LDL levels and increase your HDL levels, so your lipid profile is improved. When you have a better lipid profile, you have less LDL oxidation, and that means that you're going to have less plaque buildup. So by taking the nattokinase, the K2, and the D3 together, and you're doing resistance training, what's happening is not only are you helping with your cardiovascular health, but you're also helping with your bone density. Again, D3's efficacy goes up when you take magnesium. And like I said, you can take magnesium 3 different ways from my store: through the Boomer Boost powder, through the magnesium and zinc supplement, or the vitamin C and magnesium. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Follow this protocol. It works. As you get older, you're going to need to improve your cardiovascular health and your bone density. Trust me. So if you don't improve your bone density, when you get into your geriatric years and you fall, many patients after 2 or 3 weeks after they break their hip, they die. So that's, so you don't want that. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. And don't be a little lady that can't get up because of a broken hip. All right, let's go back to Mearsheimer and how he has analysis paralysis. He always tells you what's wrong with Trump, but he doesn't give you a solution, except to be a pacifist.
And adversaries alike. So I think that we do have some leverage there. Maybe Trump could tell the Indians that he'd give them a real sweetheart deal if he felt they were on the verge of going to war and Trump didn't want them to go to war. But just hard to say what's going on with regard to U.S.-Indian relations over the Kashmir crisis at this point in time.
You've touched on China a couple of times. It seems to me, looking at almost everything the Trump administration,
this whole Kashmir, Pakistan, Indian, conflict, this would not have we would not have to worry about it if we allowed for our national security state allowed for the nuclear proliferation to happen in that region, and we didn't take it out and forced India to de-escalate their nuclear proliferation and physically knocked out the Pakistani nuclear proliferation. So just extrapolate this to Iran, where it's even a crazier environment, especially with this theocracy with the Ayatollah. And our national security fucks it up again. And what's going to happen is they go nuclear, and it's going to change the whole dynamic of what our optionality is in the region.
The war on DEI in Harvard, and that actually involves fighting back against a lot of Chinese influence in American higher education institutions, or whether it's the Panama Canal, the Gulf of America, as it's now called, or whether it's Greenland, or whether it's even Iran and the Middle East, and Ukraine too, and of course Taiwan. China is increasingly the main strategic focus, and the Trump administration, all the sound and fury that it makes on the world stage, there's always a Chinese element in its thinking.
There's no question about that. You want to remember what I said about Trump's first administration, right? Only radical change that was made in foreign policy or domestic policy was with regard to our approach to China. Up until 2017, when Trump moved into the White House, the United States had pursued a policy of engagement with China. This was true in Republican administrations, and it was true in Democratic administrations. Both the Clinton administration and the George W. Bush administration played a key role in bringing China into the World Trade Organization, which helped China grow its economy by leaps and bounds. But when Trump came into office in 2017, he abandoned engagement and he did a 180-degree turn and adopted a policy of containment. So Trump has had his eye on China as a potential threat for a long time. And as I said, he also was interested in improving relations with the Russians in his first administration, because he wanted to have good relations with the Russians so that we could pivot to Asia and so that we could peel the Russians away from the Chinese, right? So from the get-go, Trump has been very oriented towards containing China. Biden, it's important to emphasize, Biden followed in Trump's footsteps. Biden did not go back to engagement. He stuck with containment. And in fact, you could argue that Biden was tougher on containment vis-a-vis China than Trump was in the first administration. Now, Trump is back to dealing with China. He wants to focus on China. This is what we were talking about when we focused on Pete Hegseth before. Hegseth is a China hawk. he wants to contain China. There's just no question about that. And you want to understand what's happened here, Freddie, is that since 2017, when Trump first moved into the White House, the balance of power between China and the United States has shifted in China's favor. We meaning the United States, is still the most powerful state on the planet. China is clearly number 2, but China is closing the gap. And the United States lives in mortal fear that the Chinese are going to dominate cutting edge technologies moving forward. We have a competition with the Chinese as to who's going to develop sophisticated technologies moving forward. And the great fear in the United States is that the Chinese are going to beat us at that game. And that's going to have huge economic consequences. And furthermore, as the Chinese economy grows and closes the gap between its size and the size of the American economy, it takes that economic wherewithal and translates it into military might. So the Chinese military is growing more and more powerful with the passage of time. The Chinese are not only building military forces that will be useful in East Asia, they're also developing power projection capability. They're building a blue water navy. They want a military that can go along with their Belt and Road initiative. The Chinese are imitating the United States, and this really spooks the Americans. And the Americans.
And here's the point I have with Mearsheimer: analysis paralysis. What's the solution? If it doesn't come out of his mouth that we're launching Tomahawk missiles into the forbidden city and annihilating the CCP, then he's all talk, no action.
China. Again, as I said, this was true of the Biden administration, and it is certainly true of the Trump administration. But what you want to understand is that because we're pinned down in the Middle East and we're pinned down in Ukraine, it's very difficult for us to pivot to Asia. The best example of this, and it's a very important example, is our war against the Houthis. Right? The United States has huge numbers of naval assets deployed in and around the Red Sea for purposes of fighting against the Houthis. What's happening is we are expending huge amounts of ammunition against the Houthis that is needed for East Asia. We have large numbers of naval forces in the Middle East that should be in East Asia. It just shows you the difficulty we're having pivoting to Asia to deal with China. And this is all at the same time that China is growing more powerful militarily. And again, this gets back to the Iran scenario. Do we really want to launch a major war against Iran that will go on for a long period of time?
I think this is where he makes a mistake. I think this is where he makes the mistake. He's assuming that it would take a long time. I don't think it would take a long time if we're willing to go all out on it. Second, I don't think that the actual secular side of the secular part of society with Iran will galvanize and support the Ayatollah. I think the quite opposite. So the fall of Iran, the fall of their theocracy, probably will be quick. I don't think it would be drawn out. It's just that the United States is afraid. I think his assessment's wrong.
American forces in the Middle East for a long period of time, when we have to be principally concerned with East Asia and containing China. And of course, the answer to that is no.
I think what you...
We're Phoenix Energy, a family-owned oil company focused on unleashing American oil from North Dakota and Montana. We've already sold over...
I think what you, in relation to China, I think what you're talking about there is what people in your world call the Thucydides trap, which I believe was Allison's term, was it originally? That two superpowers cannot really exist together, or at least one superpower cannot replace another superpower without there being a major war. Do you think that trap has inevitably been sprung, is springing? Is it is a major conflict between China and America inevitable?
Let me tell you what my basic argument here is. The Thucydides trap is an argument that Graham Allison laid out, which is different than mine. My argument is that any great power in an ideal world wants to dominate its region. It wants to be a regional hegemon. It wants to be by far the most powerful in its region of the world. And it also wants to make sure that it does not have a peer regional hegemon. The United States is the only regional hegemon in modern history. We dominate the Western Hemisphere. There is no threat to the United States from any other country, military threat, from any other country in the Western Hemisphere. We are a regional hegemon. At the same time, we go to great lengths to make sure that there is no other regional hegemon, either in Europe or in East Asia. Therefore, we went to great lengths to help defeat Imperial Germany, Nazi Germany, Imperial Japan, and the Soviet Union. We played a key role in putting all four of those countries on the scrap heap of history because the United States does not tolerate peer regional hegemons. The problem that we face with China is because it's so powerful, it threatens to dominate all of Asia the way we dominate the Western Hemisphere. And that is unacceptable to the United States. And this largely explains why President Trump, when he moved into the White House in January 2017, abandoned engagement and pursued containment policy. And it's why Joe Biden doubled down on Trump's containment policy, because both of them understood that China cannot be allowed to become a regional hegemon. Now, one final point. It does not mean that war is inevitable. With regard to Imperial Germany, Imperial Japan, and Nazi Germany, obviously there were wars, world wars, and the United States got involved to prevent those countries from becoming regional hegemons. But if you think back to the Cold War, which you and I know well, in the Cold War, thankfully, we did not have a hot war. It was a Cold War. And the Soviet Union lost the Cold War, and then the Soviet Union disintegrated in December 1991. But it was without a shooting war between the United States and the Soviet Union. Let's hope that the security competition that has now set in, where the United States is trying to prevent China from dominating Asia, ends up like the Cold War and not like World War I and World War II. It's very important, especially since we live in the nuclear age, that we not have a war between China and the United States. But the potential, Freddie, for a war is real because China has a deep-seated interest in dominating Asia. It's in China's interest. And we have a deep-seated interest in preventing China from dominating Asia.
All righty. As we continue on, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the products that I offer, stack them the way I'm telling you to stack them. These are products that I take. I take a very comprehensive protocol to slow down the aging process and to boost up my immune system. I'm showing you ways to do this based on your budget. So let's take a look at another stack that's really powerful. Vitamin B complex. This will help with your energy levels, your cellular metabolism, and your neural health. The first 4 B vitamins will help with your mitochondria, so that's going to boost up your energy levels. B vitamins are extremely important for cellular metabolism, and B12 will help with your neurons and maintain that neural health. Very important when you get older. Taking vitamin B complex every day is very important, especially if you are 40 years of age or older. Now, when a lot of people, they're stressed out, they're not getting enough sleep. It's important to get a good night's sleep every night. So take Good Night Formula. It has tryptophan, melatonin, GABA, and passion flower. So it'll allow you to get into 3 cycles of REM sleep and deep sleep. That's very important. So you'll be well rested in the morning, so you'll have energy. You're detoxifying your central nervous system. You're bringing down your cortisol levels, and also you're consolidating memory. Very important to do that every day. And a holistic approach to slowing down the aging process is proper diet, proper exercise. Make sure you stay away from processed foods, drink filtered water, do the 4 modalities of exercise: cardio, resistance training, balancing, and stretching, learning new things, spirituality or mindfulness, some meditative practice, proper sleep. All these are very beneficial to slowing down the aging process and helping your body heal. All right. So people that have chronic sleep deprivation, you're going to be irritable. You're going to have less consolidation of memory. You're going to have high cortisol levels. So that's immunosuppressive. And what's going to happen is that you're increasing your chances of early onset of dementia. So make sure that you take Goodnight Formula, get the proper sleep that you need, and slow down that aging process and improve your brain function. So get the Goodnight Formula, stack it with the vitamin B complex. That's a good stack for neural health and for energy levels. And targeting your digestive system is really important. And you can do that by taking digestive enzyme complex. This will lessen the load on your pancreas. This will help you break down carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids without overloading your pancreas. You can also take this if you're an athlete to digest your pre or post fuel source for your workout. But if you're 40 years of age or older, you should be taking this like pronto every day. And what that will do is it'll lessen the load on your pancreas and it'll allow you to digest your foods, and you'll be able to absorb your nutrients. No matter how healthy you are, your pancreas does not function as well as when you were younger. So it's very important to keep that in mind. So digestive enzyme complex also has enzymes in it that breaks up glycoproteins. That was important in 2020. If you remember, I kept on telling you to take digestive enzyme complex. And also it has bromelain in it. That's fibrinolytic. They'll break up clots. So a great way to stack here is help with your cellular metabolism, your energy levels, your mitochondrial health, and your neural health by taking the vitamin B complex, taking the Goodnight Formula so you get a good night's sleep and you're consolidating memory, you're detoxifying your central nervous system, and you're helping with your pancreatic health and your digestive system. So take this as a stack. It's very powerful to help improve the health of your body. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, use discount 5, you get $5 off any order. If you spend $150 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. So help support my work, and it's a win-win situation. You are improving your health, and these are products that I take every day. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. The link is in the description of this video and all my videos. All right, let's take a look at anything new that's coming up here. Let's go to CNN. They're talking about GOP amps up Trump impeachment talk. Really?
A solid game plan can make all the difference in ensuring a safe and enjoyable trip. That's where float plans come.
We've already seen this. They've already tried it twice. I'm certain they would try it again.
President Trump won't be on the ticket in the 2026 midterms, so GOP leaders are discussing ways to turn out the MAGA faithful. One way to do that, talk up the prospects that Trump could be impeached for a record 3rd time if Democrats take back the House, even though Democratic leaders are so far wary of doing so. My new reporting this morning, my colleague Sarah Ferris details how Trump and GOP leaders are plotting their midterm strategy, trying to woo key candidates, including Governor Brian Kemp for a Georgia Senate run. But not all Republicans think the strategy of talking up a potential Trump impeachment is enough to win.
If the Republican campaign message in the midterms is vote for House Republicans and vote for Republican candidates for Senate, to stop the Democrats from impeaching Trump. The American people are not going to care because they've seen that show twice and it didn't matter. It won't work. Yeah.
Excellent panel back. I mean, look, midterm elections, as we know, are typically very painful for a party in power. We have problems with the economy, concerns about Trump overreach. Democrats are very confident that things will change next November. However, this is a small map. This is a battleground where very few districts are truly at play. There are only 3 Republicans in districts in which Kamala Harris won, which is perhaps why they want to figure out ways Republicans do to animate the base and win a potentially close election here. Look at how we talk about impeachment polls. Historically, among the American public, the first Trump impeachment shows 51% of Americans thought that was not the way to go. Clinton impeachment, 65% of Americans at the time did not think it was the way to go. Even Nixon, as they were moving down that road, 51% thought it was not the way to go. It was different after January 6th, the majority of voters viewed it that way. That's a different situation, of course. However, that explains to you why they're trying to amp up the base. What are you hearing about the way that Trump and Republicans are viewing their chances in the midterms?
I mean, listen, I think they're concerned. Obviously, the economy is going to be the biggest issue. It was certainly in the last election. And Republicans are concerned that they're going down this road of tariffs.
It's really simple. If you've been following me for the last 4 weeks about, the market tanking and how it's been healing over time and how to gain and earn yield based on certain positions. If you listen to me, you made money. All right. So the market, the stock market, this wealth effect, we're going to see an all-time high in the S&P 500 with high probability by year end. And so that's going to translate into positive feelings for the GOP for the midterm elections into 2026. So I'm not worried about this. Now, there may be a little bit of a hiccup depending on, will there be supply chain disruption? There maybe not. But I'll tell you what, it looks like we saw the bottom 4 weeks ago when the S&P 500 hit 4,800 and just above 4,810. I think it was like 4,820, something like that. But we saw the bottom. So the economy is only going to keep on moving forward. Now people would say, well, why are we seeing, potential hiccups with supply chain because of the tariffs and how that might hurt the economy? And that the GDP numbers that came in at positive 0.3 instead of, something more robust. Well, the reality of the situation is the GDP number came in better than expected. The economists were saying it was going to be a negative 1.5 or 1.4. Negative. It didn't come in negative. It came positive. Now, is there a slowdown based on GDP? Yes. But the thing is that the forward indicators of the stock market is saying that investors are viewing the economy in a positive light 6 to 12 months out. Well, that's going to affect the midterm elections in a positive way for the GOP.
Policies that they're going to be able to do, especially when you look at those creating jobs kind of across the country. But this impeachment issue, I think, is red meat for the Trump base. This is something that would galvanize his base to get them out, get them into rallies. This is the kind of fighting mode that Trump likes, and the idea that Democrats are so out of touch. And that's why I think you really see leadership in the Democratic Party saying, like, hey guys, no, let's not talk about that.
Let's talk about the economy as well. But what's interesting that is there was one of the most vulnerable Senate Democratic candidates, the Senate Democrats, John Ossoff, in a rally back home, just at a town hall a couple of weeks ago. He was asked about impeachment. He suggested that Trump and his actions on this cryptocurrency venture suggested that perhaps that's enough for an impeachable conduct, or at least an investigation into it. I asked him about those comments that he made.
It appears that the president's business and family are being personally enriched through this cryptocurrency venture. That kind of misconduct, I think, exceeds.
You got the whole Congress, House of Representatives and Senate doing insider trading that's, quote, legal. And there are more, as a percentage of the population, All right, your representatives are supposed to be representing the overall population of their districts, all right? So you would think that the wealth of a congressman or a senator would be about the average to their constituency, maybe a little bit above average, not way above average. Most of the people that are representing us in Congress and in the Senate are multimillionaires, but they don't get there as millionaires, most of them. They become millionaires once they're in. It's insider trading because they have insider information and they can legally do this, which I think should be illegal. They should put it in a blind trust. But the thing, the point here is that he is saying that the Trump family is, pay to play and, on the take. What about the Biden family? What about all of our representatives in Congress? All of them in Congress and in the Senate. Bullshit, that's what it is.
Virtually any prior standard for that kind of inquiry in the House.
It's hard to separate the politics. Republicans already going after them as comments, keeping it on an issue in your campaign.
So I stand by those comments 100%.
I mean, we should never take impeachment off the table. We should never take, where we see law breaking, we should never take accountability off the table.
That's the tension. What the Democratic leaders want.
AOC, who was a representative in the New York district, looks like she's getting a little unhealthy. So she really should be taking the boomer boost and lose some weight. But we'll talk about that later.
Due dates to due dates, and it made me go from weeks behind to weeks ahead of my deadline. You see, I used to just bed rot all day getting nothing done. And
that's the tension. What the Democratic leaders want to talk about, and what a lot of members say that they need to hold Donald Trump, what they say, accountable for going beyond the Constitution.
It is a tension. On one side, you have this concern in the Democratic Party around them being too cautious and pulling their punches against the Trump administration and really almost a yearning, mostly on the progressive base, for accountability. But on the other side, too, you've had really an inconsistency of what to focus on when it comes to that message. Do you hone in on DOGE efforts, on the economy, on tariffs, on immigration, what have you? And we're seeing the collision of those two sources of anxiety here. Those that want the party to focus on the issues and those that actually see an opening for real accountability. What's absent in all of these conversations, though, is actually putting forth a consistent agenda, a consistent plan that you can rebut against the Trump administration.
Can I ask you just about Trump's mindset as we head into the midterms? You're hearing that he's probably going to do a lot of rallies, endorsements. He's very focused on trying to keep the House. What's your expectation of his involvement in the midterms? Because look, Democrats actually would be happy if he was on the campaign trail.
They would, and he loves nothing more than being on the campaign trail, right? He loves those rallies and comments like that. What you just played, that is exactly what Trump and his team want to hear. He does best when he's embattled, when he's pushing against something, when he can play the victim and say that he is being targeted. You saw what happened with his numbers. They're looking back at when that first indictment came down and how suddenly he was in the wilderness and then he became the center of gravity for the political universe and really used that and turned it into a galvanizing moment for him. If Democrats continue on this train, you better bet they're going to try to do the same thing. Whether it'll work or not, that's the question.
In the meantime, there's a big effort to try to get some.
The reality of the situation with Trump, because of his soul root, if you go after him, you're only going to make him stronger. His kryptonite is just ignoring him. But if you go after him, he's a counterpuncher. And I'll tell you, he gains strength. He doesn't lose strength. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the resveratrol. I've been taking resveratrol for decades. This will help to soak up free radicals because it's an antioxidant. It's going to help with your mitochondrial health, boost up those energy levels. It'll help with youthful gene expression and help to get rid of cells that are in senescence. It stacks really well with C60, NAD+, and ubiquinol, even clarity factor. So please take resveratrol, and like I said, stack it with another supplement that I just mentioned to get the max benefits. Very important to be taking resveratrol every day. Now let's talk about the health of your neurons, especially if you're older. Really important to maintain the health of those neurons. Now, it's a holistic approach. It's proper diet, proper exercise, proper supplementation. All right. You need to do all 4 modalities of exercise to help with your neurons. That's cardio to get the blood flow to your brain, resistance training, which will activate certain types of neurons that help to contract the muscle and to help with the kinematics. Your stretching will activate a different type of neuron because those neurons are at the end of your muscle. And balancing exercises will help to activate that cerebellum and to help with the kinematics also. But proper supplementation is very important. Take ubiquinol, which is the most bioavailable form of CoQ10 that you can buy. Most people that take CoQ10 are taking the wrong type. You want to take ubiquinol, all right? This is the most bioavailable form of CoQ10 that you can buy. So go to my store and get it. It's the best you can get. You can't get any better than this. So take this every day. It's an antioxidant, so it's going to soak up free radicals. It's going to help with the mitochondrial health, so you're going to have more ATP. That's really important. But it'll also help to support and protect your neurons. Now, NAD+ is a supplement you take to boost up your NAD+ levels. With boosted up NAD+ levels, you're going to have more energy. You're going to help heal your DNA damage, cellular DNA and mitochondrial DNA. And your NAD+ levels, when they're increased, will help with neural health and neural protection. Stack it with ubiquinol to get that synergistic effect. And you can also stack it with resveratrol to get max benefit. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the NAD+, the ubiquinol, and the resveratrol, drink it with filtered water, take it every day. And like I said, it's a holistic approach. It's not just proper supplementation, but it's also proper diet and exercise. Make sure you sleep, detoxify that central nervous system. All right, proper sleep is really important too. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. The link is in the description of this video and all my videos. All right, let's continue with CNN.
Brian Kemp, the governor of Georgia, John Putin, said a majority leader flew down to Atlanta over the Easter break, did meet with him and Kemp's wife. Also, other senators have been in touch with him. We heard that Trump himself had a conversation with Kemp back in February about the Senate race. There's no commitments made that we're hearing, but given that Kemp did not overturn the election in 2020 and became the whipping boy for Trump for so long, could Trump get behind someone who would be the biggest recruit for the Senate GOP?
I mean, what we're hearing from the Trump team is they don't need MAGA acolytes. They need to keep the majority, right? And I think there has been kind of a truce or kind of a willingness to work with John, who clearly wants Brian Kemp to be the candidate. I think the big question here is, does Brian Kemp win? What governor have we ever seen that likes to go into the Senate? The answer is literally zero.
Yes, exactly.
So does he he looks at what he's been doing in this state there, being able to be the number one kind of office holder in chief to go into the Senate and dysfunction here in Washington. It's a hard sell, I'm sure.
If he says no, there'll be a huge black eye in the GOP, sort of giving this push. I do want to turn to another story about Senator John Fetterman. First, I want to show you what he said to me about all this debate. One, about how some on the left are saying that we should rail against an oligarchy, that the United States is being run by an oligarchy, and then two, about some on the left calling for impeachment.
Calling it oligarchy, right?
Since getting this for Mother's Day, my family's been able to spend so much more time together. Skylight Calendar is the perfect Mother's Day gift, and it really makes me feel seen. No more missing appointments or confusion with my partner. Responsibility just isn't on me. Everyone
calling it oligarchy. What do you think? Is that smart politically? Well, I think the vast majority of people may have to Google what that is.
Some of these guys on the bus say that if you do get the majority in the House, impeachment should be part of the equation.
That's just dumb. I mean, that's not going anywhere. I mean, it's been done twice.
So this all came before the story was reported in New York Magazine about John Fetterman's mental health. He's been very public about his struggles with chin in the last year, but this is a new story that just came out on Friday. The headline, all by himself, John Fetterman insists he's in good health, but staffers past and present say they no longer recognize the man they once know. We have reached out to Fetterman's
Well,
office.
I think honestly that I believe he had a stroke. I think that's what it was. I'd have to go back and research that, but I thought he had a stroke. But the thing is that he's actually one of the most sensical individuals on the other side of the aisle. He's almost a centrist now. You know, maybe the stroke and the brain damage, you know, helped him. But the reality of the situation is if his staffers are upset with the policies that he's prescribing, or that he is, you know, trying to reach on the other side of the aisle to try to reach some sort of compromise, that's what we need from our representatives. Even if they're on the other side of the aisle, we need compromise in Congress. We need compromise in the Senate. But when you have staffers that are so glued to their own political ideology that now they're, you know, trying to, you know, to talk trash about their own, you know, their own representative. You know what? I think that he actually has grown. I think Fetterman has grown in the position as senator for Pennsylvania. And even though he's on the other side of the aisle as a Democrat and not a Republican, I think that you can at least sit and listen to his logic, all right, on why he is looking at certain policies a certain way. And he's trying to reach compromise. While you have many people on the other side of the aisle that's not willing to try to reach some sort of compromise. There's too much ideology going on in the Democratic Party.
Comment. Fetterman did say that
He's in good health. He's all right.
anything that was amiss, he felt the best version of himself. You interviewed Fetterman in the when he ran and he won his first campaign. What's your reaction to this? Can he survive questions about whether he can continue in office?
I mean, I think that the biggest takeaway for me from that story was the lack of transparency. And that was what I initially pushed for in that first interview. We need to really try to understand what is going on, and that's what voters deserve, that's what his constituents deserve. And I think that was the biggest takeaway for me is the amount of sort of obscuring that his team has had to do as he has worked through some of these challenges. Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple of things here, right? As long as he continues to go and do interviews and he's engaging with the press, I think that kind of tamps down some of the at least public concerns. He did have a couple of his colleagues, both Republicans and Democrats, Senator Welch, he'd written defending him, saying they hadn't noticed any of these challenges as well. And so I think, you know, obviously kind of the Senate famously, they protect their own.
Yes.
But this is going to be a thread that, you know, he and his staff are going to have to figure out how they're going to answer, because now that this story has run, there's going to be a lot of follow-up.
And in subsequent election cycles, when it's up for re-election, will he face primary from the left, given that he has emerged as this anti-left voice within the
See, they're trying to demonize Fetterman within the Democrat camp so they can replace him because he's not left enough. And then they're going to say it's mental issues. It's like a bullshit. And, you know, what we need is centrists from the left and centrists from the right. If the country wants to govern from the center.
party. All big questions in the weeks ahead.
Great ideas can come from anywhere. With Wix, you decide where they go.
Okay. All right, let's talk about the Boomer Boost. Boomer Boost has 68 nutrients that's going to help to boost up your energy levels and boost up your metabolism. You're going to lose weight. You're going to notice the effects of Boomer Boost within 72 hours. You're going to have a steady burn of energy. You're going to have more vitality. You're going to want to be active. It targets multiple systems, including your heart, your vascular system, your brain function, your musculature, and again, it boosts up your metabolism. Now, it has a very extensive profile for its compound. It's a powder. So take a look on my website in detail on what the compounds are. But like I said, once you start taking this, you're going to notice within 72 hours the benefits. Now, there's a big scooper in here. You take a scooper a day for breakfast or for lunch, not both. Take it with soft foods like hummus, yogurt, maybe even applesauce. You can mix it with filtered water, with milk. Some people put it in a smoothie, but take it every day, breakfast or for lunch. I take it for lunch. Now, again, you have a big scooper here. Take it once a day. Now, what's going to happen is you're going to start noticing much better energy levels throughout the whole day. You're going to be able to concentrate better. You're going to sleep better. And when you start to work out and you do all these different modalities that I've been talking about, you're actually going to recover quicker. All right. You're just going to have more vitality, and it's going to happen quickly. Right. And you're going to be losing weight safely. So use this every day as your breakfast or for your lunch, and you'll save money too. Now, you can also take the barley. Now, the barley is in two types, in the heirloom barley or in the gladiator barley. So what's the difference? Heirloom barley will help to detoxify your body, bring down inflammation, and soak up free radicals through superoxide dismutase. There's a big scooper in here. Take a half a scoop or a full scoop each day. Mix it with the same way that you would mix the Boomer Boost. You can take it with the Boomer Boost or by itself. It's better if you take it with the Boomer Boost. Now, with the gladiator barley, you get all the benefits of the heirloom barley and the gladiator barley. Detoxify your body, soak up those free radicals, superoxide dismutase, bring down inflammation, but you'll also gain strength, especially when you're doing weight training. So take a big scooper, one scoop or a half a scoop a day. This is a month's supply. And you're going to start seeing your body detoxifying. You're going to have less stress. You're going to build muscle. It's best to mix it, the Boomer Boost with the gladiator barley or the heirloom barley. And it's also going to help to control your A1C levels. That means you're controlling your blood glucose levels. I just gave you a formula. By taking the gladiator barley, the Boomer Boost, or the heirloom barley and the Boomer Boost, to be able to help with your heart health. So you're improving your cardiovascular health. You're improving your brain function. You're improving your musculature. You're revving up your metabolism and losing weight. You're bringing down inflammation, helping your immune system. You're soaking up free radicals. So you're helping your immune system and your cardiovascular system by doing that. You're detoxifying your body. It's a very powerful combo here. And the cost of the Boomer Boost and the barley is cheaper per month than I'm willing to bet that what you're spending on breakfast or lunch for a month. So you're going to lose weight and save money and get healthy. And like I said, with proper supplementation, proper diet, proper exercise, proper sleep, training your mind, learning new things, have some sort of spirituality or meditative practice, you're bringing down that stress in your body's going to heal. You're going to have more vitality. You're going to slow down the aging process. You're going to improve your immune system and your brain function and your other bodily systems. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the Boomer Boost and the gladiator barley or the heirloom barley, stack them together, and it's a very powerful stack. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get healthy. I want in 2025 for you to get healthy. All you have to do is go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, use discount 5 or purchase some of the anti-aging or longevity boxes that are at discounts, and take these supplements the way I've told you to in the stack, and you're going to see huge improvements in your health. All right. And you'll get compound effects. And I have very high quality products. And like I said, this is what I take. Right? I take a lot of stuff. Now, not everybody can afford that. I get it. And that's the reason why I keep on telling you how to stack them in an affordable way to target certain systems. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. With that, that's the end of the transmission today. Thank you for the ones that have been following me throughout this transmission on YouTube with the live stream, and the ones that have been listening through X Spaces. I greatly appreciate it. And I'm going to be doing another transmission tomorrow going over the market, but please help support my work. I do these videos for free to try to teach you on how to improve your health and have more vitality and give you my opinion on what's going on in the news and how it's affecting you. So please make sure you watch my shows during the weekday when we do the live stream for the market open and throughout the trading day, so you know how to benefit from the market fluctuations. Thank you for listening and have a nice day.